Good morning, everyone. Or good afternoon, good evening, whatever you're doing, wherever you are. I'm happy you're here. Let's see, today's Tuesday. We are going to be doing whatever we want today. I'm going to send out a quick note to everyone just to let them know I'm live. So bear with me for a quick, awkward moment while I post links on social media. And I'm going to see if I can talk and do this at the same time. So let's rock and roll. So let's see. I focused on this window. Hello. Why can't I? Interesting. My keyboard quit. Okay, hold on. My whole computer give up? What's happening here? One hot second, because something real weird is going on. Oh, what's up, y'all? Dang, y'all were like here on the off the jump. See, my keyboard is still apparently dead. But what's good noon? What's up, Centil? I'm doing great. What's up? What's up, Mahalo? What's up, Iapa? What's up, Bridge? Centil, Flex up. What's happening? Zahir, how you doing? Tristan, good to see you. Sanania, good to see you. See you again. Mohammed, how you doing? Give me just a quick second to figure out why my keyboard seems to have disconnected. I'm gonna try unplugging it from the router and see if maybe that's the problem. You. Perhaps now? Still nothing. This one works though. So like the computer's fine, it's just this. I'm gonna do something chaotic. All right, let me switch over to my other camera for a quick second. Hello everyone, this is what I look like when I'm not in cinematic mode. Let me turn that back in. You still don't want to work, do you? What could have possibly caused this? What's going on? There we go. We're back. All right. So that was a fun little detour. Let's get back on this thing. Let's make sure I'm on the right mic because I unplugged that as well. That's better. Okay. All right. Making coffee. I have procured coffee as well. What's up, Alex? How you doing? Thank you for the kind words about my beard. This is actually a good thing to talk about a little bit because I think there's a conception that technology is getting overcomplicated. And like I know that this is a joke about my keyboard. But I also think that like the I've been experiencing lately the line that gets crossed where it's sort of like everything before I was born is old and outdated. Everything that was invented while I'm 0 to 35 years old is great and new and important, and everything invented after 35 is senseless and nobody needs that, and we shouldn't bother with it, right? I think that's always kind of an interesting way of realizing that, like, at a certain point, when we're young, we have a lot of energy for trying new things. We're willing to sort of put a bunch of time into learning a new tool or rewiring our brain to function with a new keyboard or input method or social app or whatever it is. And then after a certain point, you get busy enough that you kind of lose the default free time, and now you have to make choices about like, what thing am I going to take time to learn? And it starts to feel like there's too much of it, and there's, maybe this isn't worth it after all. Maybe teaching rocks to think was a mistake. And that has been interesting to watch in myself as I move from being somebody who, when I was younger, like, I've never been a bleeding edge adopter, but I've always been an early adopter. And now I'm finding myself moving toward, like, maybe I'm more early majority. Like, I'm gonna wait for other people to prove that this technology is gonna work before I'm gonna spend the time on it, because I have limited time to do things. And so I wanna make sure that I'm doing things that are going to benefit me for more than a day, right? And there are exceptions to that. Sometimes it's fun to play with something for the sake of playing, but I certainly find myself doing, I think twice before I pick up a new piece of tech. What's up, Flex Up Terminal? Yeah, the SM7B, yeah. You're my Brazilian version? Does that mean you're a bald guy with a beard? I get told a lot that I look like every bald guy with a beard. How much code do I code in real time during project development? Well, I guess the answer is as much as is needed to finish the project. I do most of my code, and I'm not actually sure I fully understand that question. I still currently write all the code for my projects, and so I write it all. What's up, Lazar? How you doing? Well, yeah, I think this is kind of the point, right? Is like we can get disillusioned with, like, we see somebody come into a team and they've got all this energy and they're like, I want to try this tool and I want to migrate to this thing and I want to install this app, and you're as an older manager, you might have the instinct to just shut that down and be like, no, we don't add new things here. But as a like former young person who had a lot of ambition, it's important, I think, to separate the part, like the willingness to make things better, the willingness to believe that things can be better, which I think is a hallmark of like somebody who's earlier in their career. We don't want to kill that part, right? And I think sometimes when we try to caution people against going too hard on like something new every week, never actually doing work because you're always in the middle of a migration or a refactor, we can accidentally overextend that and say, like, don't learn new things, and like, change is not possible, and that, I think, can lead to people becoming jaded or cynical. So I don't know. It's definitely tricky. Worried about AI in the future. So I think, the way that I've been trying to think about this, and I don't know, if somebody digs through the archives, we might be able to see how my opinion has evolved over the last year or two. But the way that I'm thinking about it now is that I think AI is coming in the same way that the internet came into business, in the same way that the printing press came into the publishing industry. And I think what we found is that it's not necessarily going to replace the industry, it's going to shift it. And there's still a market, but it's smaller and it's higher skilled for like handwritten things like calligraphy. Even though the printing press came in and made it much easier to just do mass-produced books, there is still a market for brick and mortar businesses, for retail stores, for that in-person experience. It's smaller than it was, but it's still there. And honestly, these days, with how the online experiences are kind of all trending toward like everything is exactly the same, and you can't really tell if something was made by a person or if it's like drop shipped from somebody, it's not Etsy anymore. It's like the drop shipping company that put up an Etsy profile. So now, like, there's extra value in going to an in-person event and finding something that was made. You can talk to the artist who made it, or to the person who made the clothes or whatever it is. That so that it didn't kill those markets, but it changed them. It shifted them pretty irrevocably. And I have a hunch that code's going to be the same way. I don't think that code ever goes away because LLMs at the end of the day are prediction machines. They don't generate novel ideas. And in order to create something using the AI, you have to be able to describe it in pretty intense detail, and you have to be able to argue with it and notice when it was wrong and tell it what to fix. So I don't think we're going to see a world, at least in the near future. I think we're kind of hitting a plateau in what AI is capable of, and maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I'm seeing signs that they're not really, like, the models aren't getting like better. They're now, we're in the like incremental gains phase, and so that to me says that we're going to be able to get an engineer to prompt an LLM to get a thing that they already know how to do, or like a writer might be able to talk to an LLM and get it to give them something that's a good first draft for them to then work on. But I don't think we're going to see a world where like good art or good work is being completely produced by an LLM by somebody who doesn't have the underlying skill set already. And again, that's just because they're not novel creation machines, they are prediction engines. So the only thing they can do is chop up what exists and give you a rehashing of that. And that's why we get all the funny things that AI does. Like, it always says, let's delve into this, or, you know, things like that. I think the major challenge that a lot of people have is that we see something come into a market and we assume that the rate of acceleration that it had is constant. And so, you know, if you look at really anything throughout history, there's the breakthrough period where the graph goes like this, and then it pretty quickly kind of goes off, and then it'll like still nudge up, but like that first adoption phase is really aggressive. And I think that we've seen AI in this really aggressive adoption phase, but we're also seeing that like AI isn't very useful in most of the applications it's being put into. Like, I don't really need an AI assistant in the bottom right corner of every website that I visit. Like, it's just an expensive way for the website to have a gimmick so they can say we shipped AI. And the places where AI is useful are places where we were already using machine learning and it's just gotten better, right? And so we didn't really notice it. In the places where we do notice it, we're usually unhappy, like in the Google search results. So my hunch is that we're going to see a sort of plateauing of people investing in AI, which will plateau the number of companies trying to jam AI into everything, which will turn into a few core use cases where AI is really good. AI is great at things like refactoring code. It's great at understanding the context of something and helping you explain a piece of software. It is good at generating things that have been generated 100 times. If you want to make a form, a form is a semantic piece of HTML. Like, AI is going to be good at that because they're the same every time. Those sorts of things, AI will settle into that workflow. Things like Copilot and so on are going to be really good at handling that type of coding work. And so if somebody is currently employed as like I don't even know what the word would be, like an unskilled coder, if that makes sense. Like, if your job is to sort of like copy paste components, you don't really know how they work, you don't have a lot of the ability to like grasp how things fit together, you can just follow a checklist, then sure. Like, I would say if your job can be replaced if your job is a checklist, we can probably replace it with a robot, and that puts it at risk. But if you are doing generative work, if you're listening to somebody describe a problem and you're converting that problem into a to-do list and a set of outcomes, and those outcomes become actual tasks, and those tasks become a to-do list that you are going to build, that like generating that checklist is still not something that an AI is going to do well. And unless you can fully describe those, like, there's a joke going around that, you know, in order for AI to replace our jobs, the clients would need to be able to accurately describe what it is they want, so we're safe, right? That joke is, I think it's a funny joke, but it's also, I think, pretty accurate, right? Like, a lot of what we learn to do as software engineers isn't necessarily like the nuts and bolts of code. That's a component of it. That's what allows us to complete the job. But what the job actually is understanding when somebody says, I want to build a website. We have to understand what that means. What are the components? How do they fit together? What are the user flows? What happens when somebody clicks that button? Where does the email go when they submit the newsletter form? How do we make sure that the client can actually manage this thing? What happens when they want to change a feature or swap out an underlying component, or any of those things that happen all the time in web development projects? And AI isn't necessarily going to easily understand when a client says, like, I won't change this. Make it pop. How do you interpret that, right? Like, that's our job, is to understand when a client says something vague. We have to be able to ask the right clarifying questions and to understand through our intuition and experience how to convert the sort of vague desire into something new that they value, right? So I think in terms of how AI fits into the landscape, I would say it fits into the landscape the same way that power tools fit into the construction landscape when we shifted from like all hand tools to power tools. It made it easier to do certain things, but like it doesn't build the house for you, right? And AI might be able to get a little further than a power tool can on building the house, but like I'm not living in an AI generated house. You know what I mean? Like so that's sort of where my heart is. Let's see. Depicting my career path? Okay, all right. Let's see. How do we do that? Let's do that. I can talk a little bit about my career path, and I will do it using TL Draw. So let me get a screen set up here. And then I'm going to share my screen. And then I'm going to choose the better layout. This one. And I need to make this like that size. Yeah, how about that? Okay, so let me do, how many minutes are we in here? We're at 17. I'll tell this story and then we'll clip it up and I can put this somewhere. I don't know where. Let's see, 17, 30-ish. Okay. So, all right, here's how I got into tech, because my story it wanders all over the place. I never would have guessed in a million years that I would have gotten to where I am today, because originally I wanted to be a rock star. And so I started out in a band, and so my plan was to become a rock star, and the way that I intended to do that was I was in a touring band, right? And so this was probably like 2004, because this is when I dropped out of college, right? I dropped out of college. I decided I was going to go be a rock star, and so my plan was to move into full-time touring and, just kind of like live the touring life. So as I was touring, I was on the road probably 200 days a year. We were more or less living in a 15-passenger van. I was making, I think, $60 a month. I would I would go on tour, I'd come home, I'd get a job at like a Wendy's or something. I would work for a week, get my one paycheck, pay my cell phone bill, and get back in the van. And so this was what I thought would be like forever. I thought this was going to be the rest of my life. And so that was just kind of what I expected to happen. I was going to do this until I died. But what actually happened is, it turns out, not a very good musician. So had to take a detour. And I ended up realizing that I was the agency for my band. And so this became an opportunity, right? Because I had this sort of experience where I was building our website. I was making our tour posters and our merch. I had learned how to screen print. I had learned how to do all these things, and all of it had helped me manage this business, which was a band. I was booking tours, I was negotiating fees, I was plotting tour, routes. I was, keeping the rest of the band on time, and like I wasn't the only one doing this. The band helped, but like I learned all of these skills that allowed me to do this thing, and so I decided, like, oops, not that. I decided, what if I started an agency, right? And so this was sort of the thought that I had, that like I could be an agency for small businesses, because that was effectively what I was doing. I was running an agency with one client, which was the band. And so then I decided I would start that up. And so I ended up then becoming like the fitness website guy for a long time. I had a friend who was a like personal trainer turned like journalist, like fitness journalist. He worked for a well-known site. He was really well connected. I built his website. His friends and peers saw his website. They liked it. They wanted a website of their own. Suddenly I had built websites for like probably half of the top fitness people in the industry at the era. And this was, this was probably like, I started this in 2008 and I continued that until, let's see, closed the agency in, I think it was 2014, right? And so this was my full-time job for a long time. And during this period, because I did web development, like, let's see, this probably started in 2007, something like that. So I had, this sort of learning to code. I started coding in like 2002, 2003, somewhere like that. I was doing the band thing, thought I was gonna be a rock star. That didn't work, so ended up realizing that I had a different way I could go. Started this agency, ended up making fitness websites. I thought it was about 10 years. Maybe I'm getting my timeline wrong here. Maybe this was more like 2006. And then in 2014, I burned out, like hard burned out, like so burned out that my beard started falling out of my head. And that was a pretty like eye-opening experience for me, because I was, let's see, in 2014, I was how old? I was 29, right? And so no, that can't be right. How old am I? Yeah, I was 29. Is my timeline wrong? My timeline might be wrong. I don't know. Roundabouts, like we're gonna go with round numbers here. So this was me, just fully burned out, like beard falling out of my head. There's some couple photos you can find online where I just had like patches, or like I had a mustache because I couldn't grow this part anymore. It was pretty brutal. And then I decided I was just gonna bail. So I closed the agency. I went to Alaska. And in Alaska, I had to think about like, what do I want to do, right? Like who do I want to be? And I spent like a week, 10 days, something like that, just out in Alaska. My phone didn't work. There was no internet. The internet there was internet, but it was so slow that it took like 45 minutes to download a fishing license. Like it was that kind of like dial-up internet. And while I was out there, I just sort of realized that like none of this stuff mattered as much as I thought it did. I'd learned all these skills, I had written, let's see, somewhere in here, I'd like written a book, written a few books actually, and so something like that. There was a book. I had like started speaking at conferences. I'd started to sort of build a name for myself and had a lot of interesting opportunities. And so then I decided that if, like what I should really do is I should just take like a single contract. And I did this for 2 years, and that contract kept me busy, I don't know, maybe 10 hours a week. And this was where the depths of my existential crisis came in. Like a bad one. Because I was 100% sure that I'd like reached the pinnacle of what I was capable of, and that meant I was Like that was it for me. Like I was 30 years old. I had kind of done all the things that I had listed about what I wanted to be when I grew up. I'd had these goals of like how much money I wanted to make, how many hours I wanted to work, what I wanted to be doing. And at this point in time, this was like 2015. I was living in Thailand. I was with Marissa, my partner. We had met in 2014. I was working about 10 hours a week. I was making six figures. I kind of had all the things that were on my list, and I just felt empty because every one of my goals had been like a quantitative goal. You know, acquire six figures in salary, acquire X number of hours of a week, acquire one life partner, acquire, you know, one global adventure. And so I got this, and I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, and I realized I didn't have a plan, and nothing felt like, okay, what's next? You know, make $200,000 a year? Okay, sure, but what is that going to change, right? Like after I cleared $100,000, my relationship with money changed, because the thing that's interesting is like when you make not enough money, you have a relationship with it where you're always thinking about money. Like, am I going to make rent this month? Can I pay my credit card bill? Can I afford this thing in my grocery cart? You know, can I afford to go meet my friends? Because that means a trade-off between that and something else. Like you're always kind of doing math in your head about like how much money do I have left in my account? And when I cleared, I think it was about $100,000. I found that like I didn't think about money as much. Like obviously I wasn't like throwing buckets of money rich, but I made enough money that like I knew my rent was paid. I knew I could afford my groceries. There was a little bit left over for savings. I was building up like, you know, some savings accounts, and I, for the first time ever, had a little bit of money in like an index fund, and I was like contributing, you know, $100 a month or whatever into my index fund and being like, yeah, I'm an investor. And suddenly my relationship with money had changed. And what I realized was like when I went from $100,000 to $150,000, I didn't get any additional like benefit. The feelings of relief and the feelings of control that I got when I went from making $30,000 a year to making $100,000 a year, it's hard for me to describe, because it was like this invisible monster that lived on my back had just sort of disappeared, and I could just breathe. Right? And life was okay. But then incremental gains beyond that didn't really make me feel better. They made it possible for me to do more stuff. Like I could do a silly project like manufacture rubber ducks, right? Like this was 100% due to the fact that I made more money than I knew what to do with when I was working as a VP in tech. And I'm really glad I did it. I mean, I have 700 of those sitting in a closet over there that I should eventually figure out what to do with. But this was a project that was enabled by extra money, but this didn't make me happy. It made me laugh, right? And like telling the story makes me happy, but the reason telling that story makes me happy is because I have a community. I have friends, I have people that I'm around. And that was sort of what I realized in this existential crisis, was that I wasn't going to get a new quantitative goal that made me happy. Working fewer hours was just going to give me more time to think. Making more money wasn't going to materially impact the way that I existed in the world outside of how much stuff I could buy. And stuff has never really been something that makes me happy. If I buy something and I just put it in a closet, it doesn't make me feel good. What makes me feel good is using the stuff. And so if I don't have a plan, if I don't have people to make stuff with, then buying more stuff doesn't improve my state of being. So I realized that I needed something that was meaningful to me. And the thing that I decided was meaningful was like teaching in community. That's what I care about. It's what I realized in my life is sort of at the heart of everything that I do. And I guess one other piece here, which is fun, because the other thing I think about a lot is that I have spent my entire career trying to find ways to make myself and my friends laugh. And that makes me want to learn. That makes me want to keep going. It makes me want to improve, because the more I know, the more ambitious my thing can be. That just makes me smile. It's a story I get to tell. It's a joke I get to make, or whatever it is, right? And so I knew this is what I wanted to focus on, but I didn't really have like a specific thing that I strongly cared about. So I ended up taking a job at IBM. And at IBM, I was working with, still to this day, one of the better managers I've ever had. His name was Robin Cannon. If anybody is hiring, I bet you could get him. He's amazing. But so I took this job, and while I was there, I got into open source for the first time. And so the thing that got interesting about this is I started learning about open source, and I was like internal DevRel. Now, I'd never really heard of either of these things. So this was all like pretty new stuff to me. And I was really into it. Like, I had a ton of fun building this open source stuff. And then I got to go around and teach people in the company how it worked. So from IBM, I did a little bit of work with GraphQL, and that GraphQL work landed me a job at Gatsby. And the Gatsby job was the first time that I was officially DevRel. And so I built the DevRel team at Gatsby. I was responsible for a lot of their early, like, what was it, 2016? Wait, what year was it? 2018. Their 2018, so yeah, we gotta update the calendar here. So this is 2018. And I ended up kind of helping them build out their community programs, building out a lot of the open source stuff. And I did that through a combination of building, like I made some automations through GitHub Actions and a few other things that when somebody merged a pull request into the Gatsby repo, we would automatically generate a Shopify coupon code so that they could get swag from the store, so that and then we would invite them to an org so that they were like part of a maintainers chat, contributors chat, and different software. I built the swag store, and it was through community efforts. I started hosting open community hours. I started live streaming things. This is where Learn with Jason actually came from, is I was trying to find a way to do something that involved the community. And I learned about Twitch, and I turned it on. And it, over time, evolved into what Learn with Jason, the Thursday show with pair programming for 90 minutes, that's where that started, was here at Gatsby. Turns out Gatsby was not a particularly well-run company, so I got out of there. And then, oops, what's going on? What are you trying to connect to, bro? There we go, like that. So then I went over to Netlify. Sarah Drasner recruited me, and this was not too much longer after Gatsby. I think this was 2019. Because again, not a particularly well-run company. And then at Netlify, I got to do developer experience. This is where I got my first taste of video production. And this was kind of an eye-opening thing for me, because one of the things I've always struggled with is the sort of ephemeralness of a lot of event-based stuff, where we go to these conferences and we make stuff, but the stuff that we make it lives for a day. You give it on stage, you talk to between 50 and maybe 500 people in the audience, depending on what stage you're on. And then maybe they record it. They usually aren't paying a lot of attention to the recording. So you get like a mid-quality recording from the conference, and that goes up on their conference page. There's no real attention or promotion. So maybe it'll get like 80 views, maybe if you're lucky, 300 views. But then it just sort of disappears, and people forget that it's there. And I had kind of struggled with that, because we had spent all this money sponsoring conferences, sending people to conferences, doing all this stuff. And I was like, we got to do something that has more of a life, like a shelf life. It should live longer than a few days for the kind of money that we're spending. And so I experimented with video production, and we had huge success with it. Like we made some videos in Netlify that got hundreds of thousands of views. We did some things that got enormous community response. People still talk about some of the projects that we did while I was there. At the time, we got described as like the sort of the model for like how to do DevRel in tech. Unfortunately, that, you know, all good things come to an end, so we lost that along the way somewhere. But eventually, I got tapped into the VP role, and I was the VP of Developer Experience and acting VP of Marketing. And so, oops, I was the acting VP of Marketing, which was not maybe what I would have done had I been given my choices. I did not want to be the VP of Marketing because I don't know how to do VP of Marketing jobs. But there was just nobody else around to do the work, so there I was. And so I did this for a while, and it allowed me, like the VP of Marketing stuff, gave me the opportunity to do more of this. How do I get this? Do these like connect? Oh yeah, look at that. Oh man, this TL Draw stuff is so good. It's very satisfying. So the VP of Marketing stuff, that allowed me to access marketing budget, which allowed me to do more of this video production stuff. The problem that I ran into is that Netlify, like most venture-backed companies, eventually becomes the victim of what I call spreadsheet guys, where the thing that was working is community outreach, it's taking care of people, it's you know, showing developers that they're in the right place, spending a lot of effort to make sure that developers feel like they belong somewhere. That's why people love companies, is because they feel like they're part of the community of that company. That's like the secret of open source and a lot of dev tools. And when just about every dev tool will get to a point where they start thinking about sales, and then they start looking at the spreadsheet and they say, why are we spending all this money on developer programs? They don't result in sales because we don't know how to attribute things. Like if you go look at a billboard and later you Google the thing that was on that billboard, the website can't attribute your Google to the billboard that you saw. But you Googled it because of the billboard that you saw, right? DevRel's the same way. If you and I have a conversation at a conference and you talk through a problem and I tell you how a certain tool can help you solve your problem, maybe tomorrow, maybe a few weeks from now, maybe next year, when you're actually ready to work on that problem, you might remember what I said and you might Google it and you might sign up for that product. That will never be attributed to the conversation that we had, but that's why, right? And this is sort of the curse of DevRel, is that if you're good at it, it's not attributable, because what you're doing is you're being a good member of a community and people just notice that you're out there and they like what you're doing and they want to be part of it, and so they check out the tool that you use and realize that it'll help their cause. You can't attribute that. So anyways, so we like wasn't quite sure what was next for me, so I was kind of moving on, living my life, and we had another like kind of and we'll just call this moment the spreadsheet guys. So the spreadsheet guys come in and they just kind of gutted everything, took out all of our ability to actually do stuff. And you know, I like Netlify's still a great company. They're still doing a lot of cool stuff. You just notice they don't get a lot of press anymore because there's nobody talking about them, because they cut all the programs that would allow somebody to talk about them, right? And that's okay. Like that's absolutely a valid strategy. You can market only to enterprise or whatever. But if your job is trying to get to developers, which mine was, and they cut all the budgets for getting developers, which mine had been cut, what do you do, right? And so what I realized was I had to do something else. Like this, what I had thought was like climb the ladder, eventually become CEO or something. That was sort of what I was imagining was going to happen. And clearly this was like a blocker. I was going to have to become a different type of guy. I was going to have to become a spreadsheet guy if I wanted to do this. And so I took a different path, and I ended up going independent. And so this was 2022. And in 2022, I went full-time on Learn with Jason. I started doing video production as my main job. So I now work with companies, I do community projects, but it's all based around like video production. And so that would be things like the Web Dev Challenge, which just released an episode today. This one is great. It's Aaron Francis, Kent C. Dodds, Charlie Gerard, Demetrius Clark. We did this one live in, let's see if we can see the whole venue here. I'll mute that, but so we did this one live in San Francisco, and this was at a place called Southern Pacific Brewing, and the Sanity team sponsored this one. It was like a Santa's workshop theme. But like, this is a super cool venue. There's like a tree growing in the middle of the space. There's, 40-foot ceilings, and it was just a very cool setup, right? So this is like one of the main things that I do now is this series. I work with sponsors to get that covered. I also have a new show coming out tomorrow. It's a game show that I'm so excited about. Let me show you a sneak peek. Let me get this out of the wall, get the actual photo that I want to show before I pull my photos back on screen here. This will do. This is a good one. So this is the set of Leet Heat, which is a new coding game show that I'm working on, and hosted by Mark Texan. If you haven't seen Mark, you should be paying attention to Mark. He rules. We had incredible people come on and play. Joel and Shruti are actually in episode 2. We had Austin Gill and Shanks Logar as our first 2 contestants. It's super fun. It combines Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and Hot Wings. So there's lots of fun things going on in here. We feed some people some very spicy sauces and see how they do. That show comes out tomorrow, so if you want to watch that, you can find that on the Learn with Jason channel. That's where it's going to come out. So just go hit the sub button and watch a couple other videos. Like and subscribe, all those things. Leave comments. Apparently leaving comments. Actually, speaking of which, hey, you're watching me right now. Maybe hit the like button. Maybe subscribe to the channel. Maybe leave a comment on this video and tell people that you're enjoying it. Anything that you do helps a lot. Sharing it elsewhere, telling your friends, it really does mean a lot to me. And especially in spaces where we have a tendency to not. Like, people only see what they see on the algorithm, right? And unfortunately, the way that a lot of these algorithms work is they optimize for engagement-based discussion. So replying to posts, sharing posts, all that kind of stuff is really useful for helping the content you like get in front of other people so that people are able to make more of the content you like. So back to the story. I've been doing Learn with Jason now for a couple of years, and that has led to, we've got Web Dev Challenge. We've got Learn with Jason is still going strong. Let me make this a little bit smaller. And that's the live stream. I'm probably going to need to rename this company so that it's not confusing that this and this are different things. We've got Leet Heat, which is the game show. We've got Unspoken Tech, which I've renamed once, and I'm going to rename it again because I'm still not happy with, because nobody knows what this is, and that's a bummer because I love this show and I want people to watch this show and know how great it is, and we're just not doing that right now. So we've got this. We also do like documentary projects. We also do what else? We're doing company videos. We're doing all sorts of fun things. But the thing that's been interesting is that I've noticed that I realized that teaching and community and fun were important to me, right? So I went to IBM. I went in as a tech lead, and I got to work on open source. And so I got to get involved in the internal IBM community. I got to get involved in the open source community through GraphQL. And I became like an internal DevRel, so I was teaching. I got to speak at GraphQL Con, GraphQL Summit on some of the open source work I was doing at IBM. And so that was like some community stuff. I was having a blast doing it. It was great. I became like the office's lunch mascot. I would like roll in and just start pointing at people and being like, go to lunch today, go to lunch today. When I went to Gatsby, I got to build the open source community. I got to work on these really fun projects like building a robot that automated giving people t-shirts. When I went to Netlify, I got to work on all sorts of ridiculous stuff. I got to dress Phil Hawksworth in a robot suit. I got to put Marissa Morby in 2 universes. We got to do a 90s themed conference. We got to recover when the 90s themed conference got thrown off because a bird flew into a transformer and took power out to the whole neighborhood. And now in Learn with Jason, I'm still teaching people. I'm still building community. I'm still having, it's more fun than I've ever had. And all of these are things that I enjoy doing and I want to do more of. And my plan from here is to just keep pushing on this. And I've got a bunch of ideas for what we'll do next. But I think there's a bunch of stuff that I don't even know, what comes next. And so I need to just kind of keep exploring and see what's out there, what the possibilities are. That was a solid 25, 30 minutes of me talking about how I got into tech and how I got to today. So if anybody's still here, thanks for listening. Let's see. What's up, Sanjeev? How you doing? Too hard to find a job as a junior dev. I agree. It is really, really difficult. I think at the moment, the best thing I've seen in terms of like strategies that I've seen work multiple times for multiple people from multiple backgrounds is try to create a public body of work. If you can write short blog posts about projects, if you learn something new, write a quick blog post about what you learned and how it works. If you can go to conferences, a lot of conferences have like scholarship programs where you can get a free ticket. Some companies will actually do scholarships where they'll bring people to events as part of like trying to expand the community. There are remote events. There's lots of ways, but like get involved in the community and try to put stuff out there and be consistent. And if you are regularly showing up in the community and you're consistently being a like proactive and friendly member of the community, it helps you get to the top of the stack when resumes are getting reviewed. It'll help you get that warm referral. It'll help you get a little bit of name recognition so that one of the engineers goes, oh, like, I've seen that person before. We should definitely interview them, right? Like anything you can do to try to expand your, I call it manufacturing luck. I actually have a whole video on this. Why don't we, let me share the video. It's here somewhere. One moment while I look this up in my very easy to navigate. There it is. This one. So this video that I just shared in the chat, which I will grab, put the link up here. That is the video that I talked to a bunch of people at all stages of their career about how they get this stuff done, and that like how they got opportunities, and it's basically around the idea of like, can you manufacture your own luck? And I would argue that you can. And if this link is too silly to try to copy paste out of a video, you can also go to the Learn with Jason Discord, and that Learn with Jason Discord is going to have a show links channel. So anything I share here will show up in that channel so that you can get those things done. So you can find them and click them instead of having to try to copy paste them out. Is that a reference to Donnie Darko? It's not. Are you talking about my rabbit? That is not a Donnie Darko reference. That is a, I don't actually know what that is. It's a rabbit wearing a monocle and it makes me smile, and so it's on my wall. I didn't get a chance to use Devon. I've only seen the news, so I don't have a lot of commentary. I know that like Devon was one of those companies that got caught kind of like faking their work, which I think is an example of like where the AI stuff is being pushed too hard right now. Like we're not treating it like a tool, we're treating it like a miracle, and so people feel obligated to create unrealistic results as opposed to just like creating results, because the AI stuff that we have is super impressive. It's just not magic, right? And so when people feel urged to, or they took $100 million in funding and they have to somehow convince everybody that they've like created AGI, which is what, artificial general intelligence. They have to do things like fake their results. Rabbit was another one. They faked their results so that they could pretend they had a miracle, and they don't have a miracle. They have a neat little prediction box that works sometimes. Right? And so, yeah, I think that one's actually a good example of kind of what I'm talking about. Like, I don't think we're going to see anybody fully replace. You're not going to be able to fully replace any of that stuff. You can't afford an open API key. One of the things that you can do is the Ollama stuff. There are ways to use Ollama on your local box. It's going to be obviously like it's restricted to the power of your machine, so you can't do some of the like really wild stuff, but you can run a lot of LLM stuff on your own machine. Or if you prefer, you can use something like Fly.io and deploy a Fly container that can run the LLM. It's much cheaper than an OpenAI key. I don't know if it's like, I don't know anybody's situation, so it may not be cheap enough, but you can, if you have a computer, install and run LLMs locally using that Ollama stuff. Let's see. Oh yeah, and that's a great point. Yeah, Google Gemini has a free tier where you can do a lot of free stuff. So that's a good way to kind of get started. Let's see. How should front-end engineers adapt their skills to AI enhancements, specific technologies or tools that folks find useful to learn in addition to ChatGPT, Copilot, and so on? I think I am not maybe the right person to talk about this, because I believe that where it's useful is in the sort of like refactoring and like initial ideation rough draft phase. I still have not, like, I'm taking over the VS Code stream tomorrow. We're going to be playing with a little bit of like code generation stuff. There's a big announcement. Can't share it yet. You're going to be excited. So tune into there'll be links everywhere, but the VS Code YouTube channel is where that stream is primarily going to be. Let me find a link to this real quick. Let's see, where would this even be? It would be in, there it is. So here's the link if you want to go get or I guess I can share the direct link to the YouTube. Might be easier. So if you want to go like mark your calendars for that, I'm going to have Cassidy's going to show me some new stuff. It's going to be really fun and exciting. Then Jack Harrington and Shonday Person are going to join me throughout the course of the stream to just see what we can build. It's going to be, kind of Christmassy. It's getting to be that time of year. It's going to be a lot of fun. You should come hang out, come say hi, help me show Microsoft and GitHub that they should work with me all the time, because that would be neat, right? I would love the job security. So, so tell your friends, bring your friends. Let's get a ton of people in that stream. It's going to be a blast. What else? What else happens? We just keep on rocking through this. Using AI for voice ordering is a new trend for online shopping. That's a great question. I haven't seen it. I think there's an argument to be made that like AI has the potential to shift the way that interfaces work, because we don't necessarily need like rigid navigation if we can conversationally describe what we want and it's good enough at inferring that it can give us good options. The problem that I've seen so far, though, is that I'm not seeing, like, I don't know if it's the way that it's being implemented on websites or if it's a limitation of the tools themselves. But every time I see like an AI powered search, it doesn't feel good. It has that same feeling as like the Google search results right now, where it's sort of like somehow bringing a bunch of stuff up at the top that isn't the thing that I wanted. It's sort of like pushing an unrelated thing, and the thing that I want is like way down the page. That seems like that's how Google feels right now. That's how a lot of the AI search engines feel, and it's kind of like, well, I don't want you to summarize it. I want you to link me to the section of docs that I'm looking for, or I want you to take me to the page. I don't want you to like describe, like make your own summary of whatever it is, right? So I do think there's a potential for AI to have like an interesting impact on UI and UX, but I haven't seen something that feels like the future yet. I've only seen things that feel like making the current thing worse. A lot of ideas for side projects, but can't seem to break the procrastination barrier. Any advice for that? This is a great question because I suffer from this a lot. I have about 100 things in my list of someday projects, and I haven't started any of them, or I've done a couple hours of like setting up a project and getting the very, very basics rolling, and then just haven't revisited it. And I think the trick I've found is to attach it to some kind of event. And that could be anything, right? Like I don't know, I wanted to build this game show, and one of my hobby projects was to like build the software to run a multi-screen game show. And so I just said, all right, I'm going to do that, right? And so I built it, and it was like a way to force. I had a deadline, like it had to be ready by the time we filmed that show, and so I did it, right? So I'm clearly like a deadline motivated. You know, if I'm on fire, I'll get something done. I've also found that making things smaller tends to help a lot. So, for example, if I have an idea for something that would basically be a new social network, and it's got location stuff, it's got friends stuff, it's got list building, it's got achievements, it's got all this extra stuff that I want to build, and I really do think it's a good idea. I won't build all of that, right? I can't build all of that. It's a full-time job to build something that complicated. But maybe I can just build the location-based stuff, right? Maybe just a proof of concept, right? And the thing that I find interesting is that once I've started on something, it's a little bit easier to just push it a couple more inches in my free time. If I've got an hour between meetings and nothing else that I can work on, maybe I just try to add like one more little feature. And by shrinking it down and trying to think of everything as being like one feature to ship as opposed to full idea needs to be done before I can share it, it helps me move things through in a way that I don't when I keep them as like, this is my perfect idea and it must be perfect before I can share it. Instead, I'm like, well, this is like one piece of functionality that I think would be cool. Maybe I can just code pen that and share that code pen. And maybe that's as far as I ever get. But I still built something, and I still learned something. And I think that's okay. Like, especially with side projects, like if you like, there's a difference between a side project and starting a business. And I think that's really, really important to keep in mind. Because a side project is like, I have a fun idea or a learning project or a thing that I want to accomplish. It doesn't need to make money. It doesn't need to be perfect or polished or feature complete. I can just have like a click this button to simulate logging in, right? Like you don't need to build the auth system. You don't need to build a database. You can literally just like build the functionality that you want and have a disclaimer that says, I built this for fun, so it doesn't have a database. When you refresh the page, all of your progress will be lost. That's completely acceptable. It's a side project. It's not a business. I think I have to repeat that over and over and over to myself, because if I know that I could do it better, my urge is to want to. But sometimes cutting everything except the one thing that was actually interesting to you is the way to learn how to do that one thing. And if it catches on, you can always make it into a business later, right? Like if people really, really love this thing, you can go out and build the rest of the features. But if all you're trying to do is see if it's fun, see if you enjoy it, see if you can figure it out, it doesn't have to be feature complete. And that tends to help me a lot. Let's see. Talked about the shift in the market. Devs aren't going to be replaced by AI totally. Doesn't this mean we need a lot less devs? I mean, here's what I have noticed is that every single company is becoming a technology company, right? Like companies that we didn't necessarily think of as technology companies, like in the US, there's the Home Depot, for example, is a giant technology company because every single company now needs to compete online because otherwise they're going to get killed by Amazon. Because Amazon has figured out that they can just take somebody's business model, drop it into Amazon.com, and eventually they choke that business out unless that business has a stellar experience of shopping and buying and all those things. And so Home Depot, if you use their website, it's really good. They're very, very good at managing, like, their inventory is right. They tell you exactly what aisle something is in. They can tell you if it's at the store you're going to. You know, like all of these things that happen that Amazon can't do because Amazon doesn't have physical stores. And like if I'm shopping for an extension cord, I don't necessarily want to wait for it to get shipped to me. I can just go get it from the Home Depot, right? It's right around the corner. And so I think like fast food restaurants or big technology companies are ordering apps or things like that. Hotel companies, oh my God, there's so much technology in hotel companies. And so all these things that maybe historically we wouldn't have thought of as being technology companies are creating tech jobs because they're realizing how big the web side of the market is and how hard it is to build something that's really good so that they can compete in this very aggressive market. So that being said, I think that there's sort of a balancing act here where I think prior to 2020, we were seeing tech jobs growing at a rate that was, I think, unsustainable, right? And so if you've only been in the market for the last 4 or 5 years, it may seem like everything died. But prior to, what was it, like 2016, 2018, somewhere in there, it kind of felt like it does today. Like there were a lot of people who wanted to work in tech. There were a decent number of jobs. Like if you look around, there's a lot of jobs coming in now, and I'm seeing far more now than I was 6 months ago, and a huge amount compared to a year ago. Doesn't mean that there's more jobs. Well, I think there might still be like more jobs than devs. The problem is that people are starting to move their expectations more senior, which is all the more reason to show your expertise in public, because senior doesn't mean what it used to mean, right? Like I think we used to think of senior as somebody who's been doing it for like 5 to 7 years. These days, you get senior as like an 18-month promotion at a lot of jobs, and you might have been coding for 18 months. Maybe you're senior. Who knows? Put your shit out there, and you might be able to get that job. It's one of those things where like, you know, junior developer jobs may be few and far between, but that's kind of because we moved the goalposts on what junior means. I think a lot of companies now think of senior as being what I would have considered to be an entry-level engineer, but it's just time-based, right? Oh, you've been coding for 2 years, you're senior, right? And so I think part of it is if you put the work out there, you show that you've been doing this, you get the automatic clout of having been doing it for a while, even if you don't necessarily have a full-time job doing it. It can help you skip the line and go straight to like engineer as opposed to junior engineer, right? So all of that is to say, I think that as AI maybe eliminates some of the jobs that I would call like the equivalent of unskilled labor, like the way that the Industrial Revolution removed a lot of the assembly line jobs. It didn't remove skilled jobs, right? Like it let me rephrase that because this is a really hard thing to talk about because like there's a difference between skill. Like you watch somebody who is doing what you might call unskilled labor, and there is a ton of skill involved in doing that. The maybe repetitive tasks or checklist tasks, right? If I can describe with zero variance how the computer should do a task, that is a thing that is at risk of being replaced. But at the same time, all of these companies are realizing that at their heart, they're tech companies. So more and more jobs are going to get created in those sectors, across banking, across hospitality, across restaurants, across like everywhere, right? We're seeing any big company, every single channel now has its own streamer, because why not, right? You can't just like publish stuff anymore. You have to build your own streaming platform. Somebody's got to build those apps because most of them are freaking terrible. So we need more devs there, somebody to make those experiences good. Like the number of jobs is going to continue to increase because every single company now needs to be online, right? Also, tons and tons of small businesses need websites, and they might not have a ton of money, but they have some, and it's part of their investment strategy, right? I used to charge, this was, 15 years ago. Oh my God, I've been doing this a long time. Like 15 years ago, I used to be able to get, like a small business would pay like $3,000 for a website. And it was, a fairly straightforward, like landing page and a blog and an about page and contact details and ability to get on a newsletter list. Like nothing wildly complex in terms of functionality, but it's what they needed, right? And I could make a good design, and I could make it function, and I could make sure that it worked on mobile phones, and they would pay for that. And like, is that going to change my life? Like, no, it took me forever to build those websites. I was probably making $35,000-$40,000 a year. But like, if you're making less than that, $35,000-$40,000 a year is kind of a life-changing amount of money. Because I when I started doing this, I think I was making 20 grand a year. Like I was at or below the poverty line, right? I was living in a like tiny little apartment with a roommate and working at FedEx Kinko's, and it was what it was. But like that was band life, and the internet and like working for small businesses wasn't glamorous. It wasn't like getting a six-figure job as an engineer at a big company, but it definitely let me build the experience that let me walk straight into IBM as a not a principal. I forget what they call it. There's like something there between senior and principal, and they just like walked me onto that job. I didn't have to like get leveled as senior and then like earn it, right? Like I had enough work out there. I'd proven it through my experience that I was this thing. And so there are lots of ways in. And I think that the need for things on the internet is only going to go up. And as people continue to try to let crappy tool, like how many Squarespace sites have we fixed? How many bad free WordPress themes have we fixed? How many times have we walked into somebody built their own Wix site and nobody can figure out how to use it, and they finally make some money, so now they're going to hire a web developer to build them something that actually functions. Like WordPress and Wix and Squarespace can all be really good, but you need somebody who knows how to use it. It's still a skilled job. So ultimately, I think that as AI comes out, we'll have a lot of people who try to use AI to build their websites. Their websites will be somewhat functional. They won't be great. They'll feel bad to use. Eventually, they'll realize that they need to invest in an actual website, not like AI-generated cruft. And then there will be engineers standing there waiting to fix the AI-generated crap. And that will be a whole industry, right? So will there be fewer jobs? Maybe, right? Like it could result in a light slimming of the market, but I actually don't think we'll ever get back to the 2020 like free money. Everybody's hiring 500 people and they don't interview, they just like give you a contract. I don't think we're gonna get back to that, right? Like maybe it'll happen again someday, but those tend to be short-lived, and they tend to be followed by a pretty bad fallout, like we experienced over the last couple of years. On the whole, though, I don't think that we're going to see these jobs dry up, right? Like I think that if you have a skill, that skill is useful and you can make a living using it. Just be mindful of like what the jobs are. Like pay attention to the job market and learn the thing that people want to pay for, right? Because it could be that the job is, AI website fixer, right? Or it could be that the job is like AI tuner, like you're going to go in and be the expert who knows how the code works to like make sure the AI is generating good code. That could be a job. Like I've seen actual listings for prompt engineers, which, like, no offense to anybody whose job is prompt engineer, but that's like the funniest thing I've seen in a long time. like there's lots of like AI engineers and stuff like that. There's the actual machine learning side of things. If you want to go like hardcore academic data science, um, jobs always get created, markets get created, right? And you don't necessarily like maybe we don't get to be webmasters the way we were in 2001 or whatever, but we still get to work on the web. We still get to build stuff, and we just have to be paying attention to how things are evolving and how we fit into that landscape and make sure that we keep learning and try not to get too jaded. Don't close off technology just because they're new. Um, you'll find a way to be valuable. Like that's the game. Is we have to find a way to use the skills we have to show somebody else that what we're doing is valuable and they should pay us for it. And if we are doing our jobs well, any task can become valuable to somebody if they don't want to do it, if they'd rather solve it with money than time. And our job is to get good enough at something that people see us as the best value for the money. They get the most value by giving us money, and they save the most time. That's why people work with me, is because I've kind of proven that I can talk to you, get your idea, and then I'll make a list. You approve the list, and I'll just make the thing happen, right? You don't have to manage me. You don't have to do any of that stuff. That's why people pay me, is because I've shown them that like they can solve their problems with money, not time. And I minimize the amount of time they have to spend to solve problems through me with money. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not worried about like the industry dying. I don't think that's how that's going to work. How will AI tools affect learning? This is such a good question. I have no idea. However, we have some history that echoes with this. There have always been sort of moral panics. Is it moral panic? Academic panic? Whenever a new thing comes out that says that it's going to make all the kids dumb. Like we are convinced that at some point we are going to break history and make all the kids dumb. And I do think there's a risk that we have steadily sort of eliminated the need for us to have deep thought. But I don't think it's necessarily AI that is causing that, because, when we had the printing press, there was this like outrage that I don't know, somehow if everybody could read a book, that was bad. Or it meant that like bad books could be read by more. I don't remember. There was like all these like opinion pieces written about how the printing press was going to be the downfall of human culture. And, then there was, like if you read novels, you were wasting your life. It was like the same way that we said that kids were rotting their brains with TV. They shouldn't be watching TV so much. And then it was they shouldn't be playing video games. They're rotting their brains with video games. Like, we grew up on books, we grew up on TV, we grew up on video games, and like all of us are still mostly functioning, right? And like, can I recite poetry the way that somebody in the 1850s can? No. Do I regret that? No. I don't know. I think like we study what we study, and I don't think that AI will eliminate the ability to think. I think the thing that we have to be careful about is pretending that somebody's ability to think is external to them, that somehow an outside stimulus can make somebody less capable of thinking. I think that our curiosity sort of transcends the tools, because there are people who learn through the TV that they claim rots your brain. There are people who learn through the books that they claim rot your brain. We learn through, the AI can teach us things, right? And the risk, of course, is that the AI companies fail to address the like false knowledge. And if the AI companies take over and we lose like first party sources, and it all sort of gets summarized by AIs in a way that's not accurate, that's going to be interesting, and I don't know what that means. But my hunch is we're probably not like, it seems unlikely that we'll look back in 50 years and go, ah, yes, because we had AI, everybody's dumb now. It just, because we've said the same thing about like every entertainment and every technological thing. And there are definitely downsides. Like, we make fun of the Luddites. Like, the Luddites had a point about why they didn't want some of the technology that they were fighting against. And like, when people say that, printing presses or video games or whatever are bad, there's some merit to all of this. Like, there's always some trade-off and something that's like, some things get a little bit worse. And I think the part that's important is to remember that we're not at the end of history. And if we look at the things that are happening and the technology that's coming around, and we look at it as if it's inevitable and things have to be this way, or that, from here things will never be the same, then we give up some of our agency, and we like externalize the world that we live in and say like it's happening to us. And so I think it's important for us to think about, what value can we get out of a thing? Like if we are looking at AI, where does it fit? Like, what is it good for, right? Can we champion that and encourage people to back away from the things that it's not good at? I don't want AI art up in hotels, right? Like, yes, I know that it costs them very little to make that, but I don't like to look at it. I would rather look at human art that a human artist got paid to do. So I can go and encourage that. And for the Web Dev Challenge, for example, I commissioned artists for each episode. And so, I have art that gets done for each episode of the show. And this is done by Mark Levy. This is for the episode that came out today. And I paid an artist to do this. Could I have gone to an AI and said generate something about Santa and workshops and whatever? 100%. And it would have sucked. It wouldn't have looked anything near this cool. And it wouldn't have had a story. And I wouldn't have met Mark. And I wouldn't, you know what I mean? All these things that happen because we work with human artists, we lose that if we walk away from that tool. So we get to make that choice. If I'm at work and we're doing budgeting planning, I'm going to budget for real artists. It's not crazy expensive. Artists don't charge a lot of money, in the grand scheme of things. And the difference between that and I don't know, the impact to me when I know that Sentry, for example, is having a real illustrator on staff to illustrate every blog post they do. And we can see this in their, in their work. If I can find it, where's their blog? They have illustrators, and their illustrators make these for every blog post that they do. And this is just so much cooler than if everything they did was AI generated. It makes me want to kind of look through their blog and see what else is out there. And that doesn't, when I go to another blog and every single image is the weird sort of abstract-y, that very specific AI style that we all see, it makes me not want to read it. If they AI generated their blog images, they probably AI generated some of the text, and that means that it's not going to be that interesting. It's going to be boring to read. Probably not going to be anything I haven't read before, because again, LLMs are just sort of rehashing engines that pull in external data and output predictions of what they think I wanted them to say based on what they've heard before. So all of that leads me to believe that when something is very obviously AI generated, I perceive it as lower quality, in the same way that I perceive things that are mass produced in a dollar store as lower quality, right? It's just when you commodify something to the point that there's literally no effort required to make it, it loses all of its value. It's not interesting anymore. So what I want is stuff that has value. So where does value come from? Well, what a great question, and a deep existential rabbit hole that we can fall down that we're not going to do today. But ultimately, value comes from what we assign to things. And so if we're looking at AI as being something that is a threat to our ability to think, our ability to create, or whatever it is, then it's on us to fucking create. Go make stuff, go learn stuff, go do things that help other people learn, and don't do it with AI, if you're worried about it. And I think the major opportunity for us here is this is creating cottage markets. Like, in the same way that there is a market for a bespoke suit where someone will go pay hundreds or thousands of dollars to have a person make them a suit by hand, people will now probably find humans to make them things, and they'll probably pay a little bit more because they know that it was made by a human, right? And you can see this in the way that like artists are taking to Instagram and they're showing process photos. You can see them paint strokes. You can see them like do the finishing touches and all these things that make you very aware this was made by a person. This was made by hands, right? That's, I don't know. I don't think that I don't think we're at risk of people not understanding things any more than we are now. I've worked with plenty of people before the age of AI who did not understand how any of this stuff worked. They just learned the right words to say and they would just spout them off to sound intelligent. And like fakers will be fakers. They're gonna find a way to do that because that's just sort of, I mean, we've had a word for it for a long time. It's a charlatan, right? And a charlatan has been a charlatan for hundreds of years. We didn't need AI for that to be possible. It's a tool that enables them to be charlatans, but so is every other piece of technology that's ever existed. A clever person who doesn't want to do any work will find ways to skirt the system and pretending that like, because a bad actor can do something bad, it's a little bit of pearl clutching when everything else we do can also allow a bad actor to do something bad. We can't only use that argument for stuff that we don't like. I'm not living in an AI generated house, Adam. Let's see. I'm way behind on comments. What's up, Johnny? What's up, Mr. Raha? Yeah, Adam, I wrote, I mean, they're way out of date now, but like, if we go to Amazon and we search my name, here are my out of date books. Yeah, this one, what year did this one come out? I think this was like 2009. And then it's like, Thomas has since done like a complete rewrite of this book. So I believe the latest version is actually up to date and useful. Mine, however, was not. I also learned a lot about publishing in this process and realized that if it was up to me today, one book so that you can say you're a published author, fine. 2 books, no, just write a blog post. Like, write the book as blog post and it's gonna have more value long term, I promise. Let's see. What do I think about Solid? I think Solid is dope. I think Ryan and there's so many smart people working on the Solid ecosystem, like Dev Agrawal's there, tons and tons of people. Very, very smart people doing very, very cool stuff. The things that are being created in Solid seem to be sort of reintroduced into other frameworks around the ecosystem. So you know that the stuff they're doing is sound. I have used it on production projects in the past. I don't currently, not really for any reason other than I just, I wanted to build something else. But yeah, I love Solid. I think it's great. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Ronak. This one was super, super fun to make that. Thank you, Lazar. I appreciate that. I'm like so far behind on the chat here. Someone that's been getting deeper and deeper into video production, love seeing what you're doing. Thank you, Clark. I really do appreciate that. And like, I'm having so much fun with it. Like, we made some stuff yesterday that is so silly, and I'm just couldn't be more pleased with it. It's the beginning of a new little like silly tradition that I have. Any updates on the videos for the community hackathons? Yes, I have them and I need to publish them. Oh my God. Matt, I'm so sorry that I haven't published these yet. So for anybody who's not aware of what I'm talking about, we do the community hackathons for Web Dev Challenge, where the challenge is open. That's actually what this post is here. If you want to do the same challenge that Aaron, Kent, Charlie, and Dom did today in this video, for the next couple of weeks, up until January 1st, you can take the challenge. So you have to build something to fix the problems in Santa's workshop, etc. Build the app, submit it to this form down here. Submit it to this form, and you will get, you get a portfolio piece. That's probably the most valuable long-term part. But I'm also, for the first few people who, first 5 people who submit, I do $150 in gear from Ugmonk, Drop, or Cocoon. For the first 25 people, I'll send you a screen printed version of this poster, which for everybody else who's participated in the other hackathons, they're coming. I'm working with a local screen printer, and it's just, working with people takes time. So they're coming. We'll get them shipped. I'm hoping to get them all shipped out by the end of this year. We'll see if we get there. That is sooner than I want it to be, but we're trying. So, but anyways, then after everybody submits, I'm going to send an email to everybody who participates and ask them if they want to demo their app to me on a call. And I record that, and then my team edits those down into little demos. And I have a bunch of them, and I just haven't had the time to publish them yet because I overbooked the end of my year intensely. Man, if anybody wants to run social media for me in 2025, I might have a job for you. Because I'm hurting right now. Email me. But so, Matt, to answer your question, I've got them. They're sitting in a folder. They're ready to go. I just need to ship them, and so I'll start doing that at the end of this week. That's a promise. Thank you, Coding Mountain Man. I appreciate that. Hey, Merrick. Thanks for contributing. Can I talk more about the process of Learn with Jason full-time versus IBM Netlify safety net? Ooh, this is such a good question. Okay, I should talk about this more. So the safety net is so critical when you're deciding to move into anything, because and what the safety net is going to vary so much from person to person, because, for example, I have a good relationship with my family, right? And if something goes wrong, I could go live with my parents. So I can take risks at a level that I wouldn't if I didn't have that part of my social safety net. I've got Marissa, who is, at the time she was working full time, and she was kind of like wanting to quit her job, but she didn't for a little bit, because that way if something went wrong, she could hold on to that job, and it would give me a chance to sort of flounder and figure out what was next. The way that I specifically made this decision is I was at Netlify from 2019 until 2022. I, during that time, was running Learn with Jason the entire time. And somewhere in the middle, I started looking at the idea of what does sponsorships look like? And that started because Netlify just agreed, as part of me joining the company, that they were going to cover the cost of closed captioning. So I have on the Thursday streams, the 90-minute streams, a live human captioner. And that's so that the show is as accessible as it can be. I want to make sure that everybody can learn. And so I started experimenting with sponsorship. I'd worked that into my contract with Netlify, where side hustles were fine. I could, as long as it didn't directly compete with Netlify and I got my work done, they didn't care. And I think you should always try to put that into your contract whenever you work somewhere, because they shouldn't care what you do outside of work. They hired you to do a job. Do your job, and the rest of your time is yours. And they don't, why would my boss at some company get a say into whether or not I can make money on the side? That's silly. That's a goofy thing to believe that somebody else should control. Anyways, so I started doing the sponsorship thing, and it became immediately apparent that there was an opportunity here that I hadn't really considered, because I had a lot of interest in that, and there was more interest than I could actually do, because people wanted me to do stuff that would have been a little questionable while I was working at Netlify. And so I was saying no to things. And so what I figured out was that with sponsorships alone, I got to the point where I had replaced about half of my income, maybe a little bit more, when I was at Netlify. So like my Netlify salary was here. I'd gotten my Learn with Jason sponsorship here. And then I ran a spreadsheet that was like, okay, all these things that I said no to, all these things that I think I could do, realistically, what would I keep from that? And I worked out the spreadsheet and realized that within a year, I had a really good shot of getting back to where I was with Learn with Jason. So when I ran that math, I had my spreadsheet, I sort of figured it all out, and then I made a plan, and I reached out to a couple key people, and I said, hey, keep this to yourself, but I'm starting to think about going independent, and I know that you've talked about doing a project with me in the past. If I do this, would you still want to do that project? And I got enough people to say yes that I was at like 2/3 of my income. And I was like, that's enough. So I put in my notice, I got those projects signed up, and I left Netlify, took like a month off, and then I started, like, came out swinging in 23. I think I like quit at the end of 22, took December off, was doing some Learn with Jason stuff, but didn't really like really ramp up until 23. And in 2023, I was able to make more than my, gross I made like way more, but this stuff is super expensive, so I didn't keep as much of it. But I did manage to replace my Netlify salary, but it was all based on this, like the spreadsheet that I made was mostly accurate. Like a lot of things happened that I didn't expect, and some things that I thought were gonna work didn't work, but I had enough momentum and enough predictability that I could confidently say, I'm gonna try this. And I have fallback plans too. Like I know I've had a handful of companies reach out to me and talk about like maybe I come do DevRel for them or whatever. So I knew I had some fallback plans, and as I'm saying all this out loud, I just want to like acknowledge how much of a position of privilege I'm coming for. The fact that in this job market, I knew I had options. The fact that I had, my family and my partner being able to, like, as like a safety net. If I completely screw up, I'm not going to end up living in my car. I'm going to end up living in my parents' guest room. Like, that is, as far as like how far someone can fall, I would be embarrassed, but my life would far from end, right? I would be fine. And so all of that being said, I sort of did the math and realized that the risk wasn't as risky as I thought. And because of that, I just put together, it was a lot of work toward the end, because, the reason I was considering leaving Netlify at all was because it was, the workload was intense there. And so, I was doing my Netlify work, and then after work I would do like Learn with Jason ramp work to try to get to the point where I felt confident putting in my notice. And so when it all happened, it was sort of, I needed that month off to like recharge and make sure I didn't burn out. But I think the biggest thing was I could point to specifically how I was going to make enough money to survive. And I'd broken down, like, Marissa and I, my wife's name is Marissa. I keep talking about her in like different capacities. But so Marissa and I sat down and made a spreadsheet that was like our budget. This is what our mortgage costs. This is what we're spending on things like car insurance and healthcare. And all that considered, we figured out this is our like minimum budget. Like if we cut off we don't go out to eat, we don't buy coffee, we don't do any of the things that are like nice, and we just like buy groceries, we cook at home, we only pay for healthcare, we cancel all of our Apple TV and our Spotify and stuff like that. This is our minimum. Like this is the austerity budget. If we like, how do I make sure I cover this? And we looked at the budget of like what I could do with Learn with Jason, and we were so confident that this was covered, and we were fairly confident that it would cover like our subscriptions and our eating out and all the other things that we wanted, that it did, like, this felt like a guarantee more or less, and this felt well within reach. And the decision to make the jump came with quite a bit of data. And, again, I had like verbal yeses on a couple contracts that like got me through the first 3 months. So that was a whole other thing of like, I lined up work before it wasn't like a leap and the net will appear. It was like build that fucking net and then go take the leap. And so that was sort of how I approached it. And I would highly encourage anybody who's thinking about doing anything independent, really break down the budget and really think about what your expenses are about to be, because things like healthcare, if you're in the United States, are brutally expensive every month. And things like, I don't know, like if you have to rent an office, that's an expense you weren't considering. If you're going to take in money, you have to pay self-employment taxes, or you have to create a business entity. And if you create a business entity, you probably need an accountant, and you know maybe weren't considering that as part of your budget. So there's a lot of things to start figuring out to make sure that you're confident. The other thing that's really important that I think a lot of people skip is when you go independent, you are not going to spend like 40 hours a week doing the thing you like. If you go independent as an artist and you're like, yeah, if I go full-time as an artist, I'll spend 40 hours a week doing art. That is not true. I mean, maybe it's true, but then you're going to be working lots more than 40 hours because you're going to do so much admin work. You have to do sales, you have to do marketing, you have to like make Instagram content so that you can sell your art. You have to get on calls with potential clients. Like in my case, I probably spend 60% of my week on sales calls. And sales call has a connotation. I think people hear that and they think a certain thing. What I mean by a sales call is like yesterday I got on the phone with a friend of mine who works at another company, and we just kind of shot the shit about what they're working on, what they're interested in, what I'm working on, what I'm interested in. And along the way, we found some things that like there's pretty good overlap in what we're trying to do, and I could make it easy for them, and they've got, you know, a little bit of budget. So probably we're going to end up doing something together, right? That's not sales. Like I'll take a call, you know, I'll talk to somebody who works in DevRel at a company. We'll just kind of talk about what they're doing. I'll give them a bunch of ideas, and it's fun. I like talking about that stuff. Maybe a few weeks later, a few months later, maybe a year later, they're going to remember that conversation, and they're going to be thinking about something, and they're going to realize that it's time for 2025 planning, and they'll say, oh, wait, we could do this, and like I know Jason would be able to help, and so okay, let me ask if we can add some more budget so that we can like bring Jason in to do a bigger version of this thing that we wanted to do. That all is technically sales, but for me it's just kind of hanging out with my friends, trying to make new friends. Like how many people can I meet that do stuff similar to what I do, and we just talk, right? And that's basically sales, but that's 60% of my week, right? And then I'm spending a bunch of time sending invoices, following up on invoices, preparing reports, doing budgets and spreadsheets. I like all that stuff. If you don't like all that stuff, like buckle up, or make sure that your budget includes hiring somebody to do that work, right? Because it's the running of the business is probably the majority of the work that goes into having a business. Doing the thing that is like what the business charges money for ends up taking up half or less the time, like the active time in the business. So that's like a really good thing to keep in mind. Like for example, I do video production for a living. I probably have a shoot day 3 times a month, and the rest of it is prep, admin, sales, et cetera, editing, all the things that have to happen to make a video work. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. But if you're thinking that like you could go independent as a video creator and you would spend 40 hours a week making videos, there's a reality shock that'll come in that I think is important to consider. What's up, Robert? Good to see you. Code Your Way Out challenge. I got something. Let's see. Just scanning the comments here because I'm so far behind. Thanks, Abe. I appreciate it. Yeah, the chat is off the chain today. I'm so excited that y'all are here. It's making me feel really good. How do you know if you're cut out for web development? Keep doing it for a while and see if it's fun. Like try to make games for yourself and play. And if you find yourself enjoying it and you want to do more of it, it's going to continue to be rewarding, right? The other thing to keep in mind though is that learning the rules is not playing the game. So that initial phase where you feel like everything you're doing is you have to look it up and it's hard, like make sure you learn the grammar. Try to stick through it long enough that you can build like, you know, in JavaScript it's all like control flows and stuff. Try to get to the point where you can like write a for loop and do functions and a few things like that don't require you to look them up, so that when you have an idea, it's not like, I have an idea. How do I make that work? And what is a function? What is a loop? How do I write it? You know, if you're always looking up how the language works, then you're not quite using the language yet, and so it's difficult to assess whether or not you're enjoying it. So try to stick through it long enough that you can sort of do a thing without having to think super hard about how to do the thing, but more, you know, just kind of like making something work. If that feels rewarding, then it's probably going to continue to be rewarding. Like every time I solve a coding puzzle, it's been over 20 years now, I'm still like, that was fun. I'm really glad I did that. AI peak pricing. Oh man, this is where like this is the worst thing that I can imagine. I'm so sad that things like peak pricing are becoming a thing. Let's see. Yeah, the docs. Where are we at? Where are we at? I also don't want 100 choices of extension cord. True. Very true. I think I missed you, but thanks for hanging out, Wes. Let's see. New to web dev and thinking about becoming a front-end dev, is now a good time, or is the market too competitive? I mean, the market's competitive. But to do the fun parts of this job, the market was always competitive. And I think the challenge is like, what's a good analogy? Like, okay, if you want to work in food, for example, right? It is sometimes really easy, like every single fast food restaurant in the world is hiring, and you can go get a job at McDonald's and it doesn't take very long, and you know, whatever. Other times everybody needs a job and it's hard to get a job at McDonald's. If you're somebody who wants to work in food, probably your ambition is more toward something like working in a Michelin star restaurant or working in like the nicest restaurant in your town, so that you can, you know, learn and become better as a chef. So if that's the case, it kind of doesn't matter what the entry-level market is doing. You're playing a different game. You're trying to become somebody who gets hired at a Michelin star restaurant. And whether or not somebody can get an entry-level job at McDonald's isn't really related, right? And so that's one of the things that I think about a lot with like a coding career, is that there are jobs that are like working at McDonald's. There are jobs that are like working in a Michelin star chef, and there's everything in between. And the thing that you want to do, what we're talking about is like the market as a whole. And when people are putting up junior developer jobs, a lot of times what a junior developer job is listed as is sort of the equivalent of working at a McDonald's. You're getting thrown into a company that just needs you to be able to like follow instructions from somebody who's going to give you a checklist. Those jobs are great for getting experience, and a lot of people who work in Michelin star restaurants have worked at McDonald's. It's not a bad thing. It's part of the process. But like, it's never not competitive to work at the French Laundry, right? It's never not competitive to get a job at the nicest restaurant in your town. That is always going to be a tough thing to do. So if that's where you want to go, if you want to work at Google or OpenAI or whatever, you know, whatever, any of these big name companies, that's always competitive, and it always will be. And embracing that as a way to figure out how to make yourself stand out is going to give you a giant advantage over all of the areas of the market. But like, you know, thinking about what you want to do and putting out a body of work that shows people what you want to do and that you can do it. It's a career is a pie eating contest where the prize for winning is more pie. If you show people that what you do is creatively solve hard problems, they are going to hire you to do that. If you don't show people that, they're going to hire you for what you show them, right? If you show them that you don't really get this stuff, or that you don't put much out there, or that you don't really, you know, code a lot, then they'll maybe give you a job where they don't expect you to know a lot, right? Because you haven't shown a lot. And so I think this is one of those things where you can directly manifest the career that you want by what you put out in public. there's more to it than that. Like, you also have to not be a dick. You have to, networking is a real thing, and it's not networking like here's my business card, but networking like making friends, trying to hang out in communities and connecting with the community in a real way. All of that stuff is so critical for our ability to advance. But like, if you spend your time putting out work that you want to do in the future, and you are constantly showing that you are learning and improving, and that you've got a lot of like interest and care for doing this well, and you're always making friends and connections in the community, and you're trying to do what you can to be a member of the community remotely and or in person, you almost can't fail. Back to that thing I said about manufacturing luck. It is really, really difficult to fail if you consistently do that. And I had that video I shared in the chat a little bit ago. It's in the Discord if you go and look in the Show Links channel, on manufacturing luck. In it, I interviewed Jason Torres and Chris Nowicki. Both of them at the time had not gotten their first tech jobs, and they'd been at it for a while. They'd been at it for a year or something. But both of them had been working in public, doing a lot of, I met them at Render ATL, so they were like out in the community. Jason had been running a live stream podcast kind of thing. There was just a ton of like community involvement, a ton of working in public, and both of them were able to land good jobs, right? And it was through their networks, right? Like, Jason got hired at Torque by Taylor Desane, and Taylor, I guarantee, saw Jason in public and liked the way that he acted in public and saw him as a community builder. And because Torque is a company that hires like staff augmentation, basically, they need people who are good at building community. He'd seen Jason's work, put him in the job, right? And so that kind of let Jason skip some of the junior engineer, like ignored given the chores, whatever, and it moved him into this role that was kind of what he'd been showing the world. He's a community builder. Now he gets to go build communities. That's a really interesting strategy, and it worked really well for him. Same for Chris Nowicki. He had, what he was putting out there, he ended up getting a job that was pretty aligned with what he wants to be. And we've seen that happen for a lot of folks, where they sort of come out, share with the world what they want to do, document their processes they're learning, and they end up in a dream job. And I've seen that happen for people, all backgrounds, all types, all fields. Like, if you put the work in consistently, you'll get what you want, and it doesn't matter how competitive the market is. How to differentiate a mid to senior level engineer in today's market? So my heuristic is that when you're junior, you can really do very little without guidance, right? That's kind of the point. You're there to be somebody's apprentice, more or less. When you're mid-level, you can do tasks without assistance. When you're senior, I would expect you to be able to do like entire features without assistance. Beyond senior, I start to think of how you affect your team. So like, senior to me is you're self-sufficient as an engineer. If somebody gives you a list, you can burn that list down and build an app. Beyond senior is where you start getting into like, can you train other people? Can you make the list? Can you take, how vague can an idea be, and you still get the right thing built, and all the stakeholders are happy? What's your ability to manage upward, stuff like that? That's when I start thinking about staff, principal, etc., as like additional rungs on the ladder, and it starts to become about like impact across the org as opposed to individual impact on your ability to code. Surviving on freelance. I did my first 10 years on freelance. My agency was basically freelance, right? And yeah, I mean, it was definitely tough. Let's see. My problem is I just don't like working. That's fair. I legitimately don't have a good answer for that, because I don't know, man. If you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it, right? I think the trick is that unfortunately a source of income is a non-optional factor of being alive. And so the trick when I feel that way is to think about, of all the things that I could be doing, which of these am I going to hate the least? Right? Because if I can't find something that I love, what can I find that I at least don't hate? And when that comes to be the case, then it's like, can I find a way to make this a little bit fun? Can I find a way to do something that I enjoy enough that I can sort of keep going? And if I can give myself room to breathe, then that, I think, becomes an opportunity to unburn out and maybe find something that's fun again. I mean, the AI art signaling that somebody is too cheap to hire a real artist is already like, this is probably uncool of me, but like I straight up judge people who use AI art. Like it is I consider it a quality judgment. Like if I see that a company is using AI art, I've immediately downgraded them in my mind in terms of quality. Less so with individuals because not everybody has budget to hire artists and not everybody is an artist. But if they're making money off of it, like if somebody's doing a course and they like use an AI art for their course, sorry, I've just knocked your course down in my quality estimation. Thanks, Aaron. Natalie is so dang funny. I wish that I lived in the same city as her because we would hang out all the time. She's so freaking funny. Let's see. Yeah, marked a company newsletter as spam because it was only AI generated images. Yeah. Take about 15 more years until AI can match premium art talent. I just don't believe that. Because I mean, I think that the AI art will be very good at generating realistic looking art, but art isn't about how it looks, right? Like this is the thing. Like there's this debate over Thomas Kinkade, which if you've never seen Thomas Kinkade, you've actually almost certainly seen Thomas Kinkade art if you've ever been in any house in the Midwest. But so Thomas Kinkade does this style of art that is very like, can I zoom in on this somehow? His art style is like this sort of scenes. Like he does these scenes like this where they all look exactly, they just feel basically the same every time, right? And there is absolutely nothing wrong with Thomas Kinkade's art, but there are raging debates about whether or not it's art. Because it doesn't feel like anything. It's just sort of like it's, you know, I don't know. And I think that one of the things that gets tricky about this is there's sort of like the art that you buy in Target, and it was painted by a real person, but it doesn't have any substance to it. Like it's intended almost exclusively to occupy wall space so that you don't have a blank wall. And that's about the end of its function, and that's about the end of its form. It's there, you know, the hotels do this too, where they get like some weird abstract pattern and it doesn't have any story. It's just like, I don't know, we had a blank space in the wall, so we filled it up with whatever that is. And so I think that like AI will be able to generate that stuff. It'll still suck, right? And this is where things get super subjective, and there's a book called The Authenticity Hoax that is definitely worth reading. But at the end of the day, like value comes from us assigning value to a thing. And if there is no perceived level of effort to create, it is very difficult to perceive value on the other end, right? Like if I can go and type into a chatbot, like generate 15 interesting artworks that go on my hotel's wall, and it spits out 15 oil painting looking things that are, you know, just as soulless as the ones that whatever like assembly line artist got paid to make for the hotels now. In both cases, that art sucks. It's not, you know what I mean? Like there's no story there. But then you go to a hotel that understands this, and they've got photography from a local photographer that's of like local landmarks or interesting things, like, right, suddenly now we've got a story, right? You can read about the photographer and who they are, where they came from. You can read about the landmarks and what they mean to the city. And now I'm interested, right? And now, is that photo better than the AI generated art technically? I don't care. I like the photo better because the photo feels real. Somebody went to that space with a thought and a story in their heart, and they made something to communicate to me, right? To communicate to the viewer some point of view. And abstract color blocks that are there to fill a space. Or even if you went to the AI and said, generate 15 photos of like local landmarks for this city, I mean, maybe that's better, but it's still like, there's no story. Why'd they go there? Why'd they pick that one? And so I suppose as an artist, if you're generating this art, you could get deep into the story, and you could start to bring people in by teaching them something or having a point of view. But again, it's kind of one of those, like, I don't know, you see the same thing happen when you see somebody like take a bucket of paint and throw it at a canvas. Usually people aren't looking at that going, you know what, I would like to pay $10,000 for that. Unless the artist is, somebody like Andy Warhol, who the story is about whatever, being iconoclastic, being weird, being the commodification of art, etc. This more modern example being that banana duct taped to a wall. Some people think it's art, some people think it's not. There's a lot of debate about it. I kind of think that was the point. And that to me is what makes art interesting, is that there's something else going on. It's not just a thing on the wall. There's a point of view down there. There's a human behind it that had something they wanted to say. And I think that's what makes art interesting and valuable. And I don't think AI we are another leap in technological capability away from AI being able to do that. And that's why I don't think that, I don't know, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Somebody clip this and we'll check in 15 years. The hard part will be determining whether something was made by a human, 100%. That's why I think the artists are doing the process videos on Instagram, showing this is me drawing, this is me folding up the art, this is me doing whatever. Running out of data to train on, I think, is also really interesting as well. Because like the more AI crap there is, then I think the more likely it is that the data sets are going to be weird, because they can't tell whether or not something is AI generated. So if it's ingesting art, it doesn't know if it's AI generated or not, and then it starts doing prediction on that, we start to see some kind of weird shift there as well. That might be its own form of art at some point, is like going down the AI rabbit hole to whatever hallucinations it creates on its own. Like, I don't want to imply that like there's no way to use AI as a medium for art, but I think you have to have more than a prompt. I think you have to have a point of view, and I think you have to have a goal and a project to make it interesting. Book suggestions for web devs. I don't read a lot of books about web dev itself because I find them to be, they take so long to get out that they're usually out of date before they hit the shelves. So I tend to read blogs instead. And I don't know, it depends on what you're working on. Like Chris Coyier is a fantastic blogger. There's really good stuff on dev.to. Sometimes watch their like top rated pages. I mean, who knows? Lots of good stuff out there. But let's see. Someone asked what you thought of Solid. Maybe they were. Who knows? I am definitely camera, like framework brained. What camera am I using? This is a Sony FX3 with the 24-70. I think I'm using the 24-70 or 35. If it's either the 24-70 set at the 35 millimeter or it's the 35 millimeter prime. Both are G Master. Okay, and that makes my whole day that you got the spark. That's definitely it. Who do I want to be in that food analogy? Someone like Alton Brown, or what a great question. I think in that food analogy, I would like to be Jon Favreau. And what I mean by that is I don't I don't know that I have like singular focus to become a all-time great. Like I don't think I'm going to invent new technology. I don't think I'm going to push the boundaries of existing technology. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the platform that I have and the fact that I can do a little bit of everything to find the people who are all-time greats and do fun stuff with them, right? And I think one of the things that I've loved about the way Jon Favreau has built his career is, and I'm going strictly from work. I don't know if he's a good person or not. I really hope he's not a bad guy, but he like starts out by making a movie, and then he sort of forms his little clique of him and Vince Vaughn and a few others, and they make a couple movies. But then he like gets to direct, and then he starts like producing stuff, and then he's kind of he's doing all this stuff, and then he like makes the Iron Man, or directs Iron Man, and he gets to be in Iron Man, and now he's like a Marvel character, and all this cool stuff is happening. And then he also gets to do like Chef. And the thing that I loved about Chef is that he decided he wanted to make a movie that like food professionals wouldn't watch and cringe when they watch the actor prepare the food. Now, Jon Favreau isn't pretending to be an all-time great chef or that he could work in a Michelin star kitchen, but he wanted to at least not embarrass chefs when they watched his character prepare a meal. So he brings in Roy Choi, who is a fantastic chef. And he has Roy train him how to make certain things, and they put together a menu for this movie. He cooks real food in the movie, and the recipes that he uses are actually fantastic. Like, you can find what he cooked in Chef, and you can make it at home, and you're going to be really happy with the result. And what I loved about it was that it was so clearly him, just like he saw craft, and he wanted to make a little love letter to it. And he wanted to do it in the best possible way. And so he dedicated himself to this really hard because it was an interest for him. He loves food. Like, it's very clear that he's like into it. But he also knows that that's not like the thing he's going to do for the rest of his life. He's not opening his own restaurant. So he like studies, he gets really good at this thing. And then when he was done, he was having so much fun with Roy Choi that he was like, let's find something else to do. And so he basically platformed Roy Choi, and they created Chef Show. And that's a series on Netflix that if you watch the first couple episodes, they literally didn't know what they were doing. He was just like, I just didn't want to stop doing what we were doing for Chef, so we kept filming. And now it's like Roy Choi and Jon Favreau are out in the world meeting chefs, meeting celebrities, doing whatever. And that's allowed Roy Choi to become kind of a David Chang style food celebrity. And I think that's just so cool that Jon Favreau has had this opportunity in his career to like do the thing that he's very good at, kind of dabble in a lot of stuff that maybe he could be good at, and it usually turns out that he finds a way to get good at it if he's not to start. He brings in really talented people, he lets them shine, and then he tries to find opportunities to let people do the things that they're really, really good at. And from the outside looking in, that all seems very in line with what I'm into. And so for me, in the food analogy, I would like to be the one who's making making Chef's Table, or the person who is we're like on Iron Chef, something like that, right? Like, I don't necessarily want to be a working chef, but I want to be part of the community in a way that hopefully helps other people build their careers. And one of the things that I've loved about Web Dev Challenge and what I love about Leet Heat is it's creating spaces for people who are amazing, and some of them have huge platforms, like Aaron Francis and Kenzie Dodds. They don't need my help, right? But other folks are newer in their careers, and they're brilliant. People just haven't seen it yet, right? And so being able to give somebody that opportunity to get up on a stage and show everybody how smart they are, I love that. That makes me feel so good when I get to see, like Zayu, who was on the Web Dev Challenge a few shows back, is such a funny, creative dev, and we just haven't seen enough yet. We need more opportunities. And so being able to provide some small platform to give Zayu a chance to shine kind of makes my day. And the more often I can do that, the happier I am. But yeah. Well, thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, Anthony Bourdain, man, I love that guy. Well, I actually didn't. Anthony Bourdain was brilliant. I didn't like him very much, uh, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, and like David Chang, I think David Chang is so cool. The fact that he gets to do what he's doing is amazing, and I'm trying to embrace this idea that the point isn't the outcomes. We talked about earlier how like I realized that I couldn't make qualitative goals. I had to make. Actually, I didn't really talk about this, so let's maybe say it explicitly. I'd run out of qualitative goals when I had my existential crisis in the mid 2010s, and what that led to was realizing that the things that were valuable to me were community and fun and learning and teaching. So if that's what's valuable to me, there's not really a qualitative like quantitative way to measure that. Like, did I learn today is kind of a yes no question. So that then becomes more of it's a practice, it's a process. I every day I have to sort of sit down and think, did I learn something? Did I teach something? Did I have some fun? Did I interact with the community? And if the answers are to those questions are yes, I'm pretty happy, like maybe I want to do it a little bit better, a little bit more, a little bit different, but I did it. I did the thing that was important to me. And so how that happens becomes a lot less important. If I make a game show, I'm really happy, but maybe that's not going to work and it's not the best thing. That doesn't mean I'm done. It doesn't mean that I just quit. It doesn't mean I failed. I'll just find some other way to learn and teach and have fun with the community. And that's, Web Dev Challenge is that, working at Netlify was that, doing the documentary stuff at Render ATL and Launch Darkly Galaxy was that, Learn with Jason, this show here, all of it is me trying to just make sure that when I get to the end of today, I can say, yeah, I learned something, I had some fun, I talked to the community, I hopefully taught somebody something. All of that makes me feel like I'm living a life that I'm proud of, that I if I get to my deathbed and I look back, I can say, most days I did exactly what I set out to do. And it doesn't require a trophy or a qualitative endpoint. I can just look at it and say, every day I got to answer yes to the questions that I decided were important to me, right? And I think the interesting thing about starting to treat things like a process as that relates to work is that now it kind of like I don't have to be a web dev guy. I don't have to be a video production guy. Those are two things that allow me to do the thing that's important to me. But if I suddenly tomorrow get an offer to like run a cooking show on Netflix and I won't have any time for web dev, I could do that and I'm going to have exactly the same amount of fun teaching and learning and goofing around with the community, right? So what I like about it is that it creates a less fixed identity of like I am a coder, I am a video production, whatever it is I do, and it becomes more of I'm in pursuit of this feeling, and that feeling is something that you pursue each day. And so each day is the practice of making sure that you make yourself feel the way that you want to feel through the actions that we choose. Whether or not those actions fall within a certain predefined set of tasks kind of doesn't matter. And so it opens the playing field, and it just means I get to choose whatever I want as long as it allows me to answer yes to those questions. That's probably the most philosophical thing I've said all day. Thank you very much, Man of Action Worldwide. What a channel name. Uncle Roger. Uncle Roger is somebody who seems like he's having a good time also. I'd also be really curious to know how much of I've never seen any behind the scenes with the guy who does the Uncle Roger character. So I don't know if he's like a born and raised LA guy who's like doing an accent, or if that's like what he sounds like all the time. I'm always so fascinated by that. Anyways, man, am I on TikTok? I am on TikTok. I'm not super active on it, but it is there. Let's drop it in here. This is my TikTok. It's got a few things on it. Um, I go in spurts. Like I think I posted these over the course of a few days, and then like, yeah. So since November 1st, I've posted like 4 or 5 things. Um, Not super active. I like it. I think it's a cool platform. I like the medium, but like if you follow me on YouTube and Instagram, you will see probably exactly the same content. Just fair warning, because I don't know how to use any of those platforms specifically. So I just spray and pray because I'm very bad at social media. Um, Being involved in so many big things, how do you take care of mental health? Uh, man, Marion, this is a great question. So, I, how do I do this? When I was younger, I didn't. And I remember I would work like 90-hour weeks. I would, fall asleep answering emails. I'd wake up and first thing I would do is check my email and I was always, always, always on. There was like never a moment where I didn't feel like I was working. And now a couple things happen. I think the most critical thing is that when I had my existential crisis, a big takeaway was the recognition and embrace of the idea that none of this stuff matters. Like, as a web dev, we get paid to move dots on a screen, and sometimes the dots are wrong, and sometimes the dots are right, and that's how we get, digital tokens so that we can buy food, right? And at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter. None of this stuff is meaningful or long lasting. It's just a job. And so separating my identity from the output was really, really helpful, because when something starts to go wrong, it doesn't feel like I'm a failure. It feels like something is going wrong, and that's a very different feeling. The other thing is I don't oversubscribe. So if Marissa was here, she would have just thrown something at me. Sometimes I oversubscribe, but currently my goal is like I try to take on one new thing at a time. So like Web Dev Challenge is big, but Web Dev Challenge is a very predictable unit of work now because I've made 10 of them. So when I get into like, today is the season finale. This is the last episode of season 1, and we're gonna take a break. We'll maybe February season 2 will kick off. I'm working on it now. If your company wants to sponsor an episode, please get in touch, because it's that time. But so it's like season 1. When I get into season 2, the production process is, I know who I'm calling to run camera. I know who my editor is. I know what the process is of getting film and sound off of the different devices and onto a hard drive and up to my editors so that they can do the edit. I know what the social launch process looks like, what the hackathon process looks like. There are things that I don't have time for, which is evidenced by the fact that I haven't published the hackathon videos, that I still haven't shipped out the posters, stuff like that. So, far be it from me to claim that I've got this figured out, but because that feels mostly predictable, then the only thing that's new is who's coming and what's the challenge. So that part then is the fun. That's the creative part, is designing like, what is the challenge going to be? Who's going to be there? How do we make sure that we pick people who are going to really shine given the technology, so on and so forth. But the mechanics of the episode, theoretically, at this point, if I had a producer, I could hand it off to the producer and they could run the show, and I could just focus on the creative and the recruiting. And because a lot of it is checklist based, I can then redirect that energy that was originally on like, how do we run Web Dev Challenge? Well, I figured that out. So now I've got that mental bandwidth back, and I can say, how do I run a game show? And so for the last month or two, my whole life has been very focused on how do I build a game show. And so we were doing things like putting together a wheel. I had to work with a set designer to
come up with a way that this thing would look, and then they built it, and I had to do the feedback and figure out what a buzzer system was and build the app that runs the game show. All of that stuff that was my focus. And while that was going on, the things that just sort of run, like Learn with Jason, I've been doing since 2018, so I know how that works. I just show up on Thursdays, and Aiden on my team helps me run the calendar and the social for Learn with Jason itself. Web Dev Challenge, I have a process for that. So when it's time to film, I dedicate a couple days for that. When it's time to do the editing process, I dedicate a couple days for that. But otherwise, all my time is mine to focus on the new thing, which is Elite Heat. And once I get a few episodes of Elite Heat down, I will probably start thinking about the next thing that I want to do. And I've got a couple ideas. I'm talking to a couple companies. And if there's something you want to see me make, please hit me up, because lots of fun to be had out there. But the intention is to always kind of keep myself on one net new thing. Because if I was trying to do Web Dev Challenge and Elite Heat at the same time, I would be toast. There's no way that I can manage the mental bandwidth and context switching of like two completely new processes at the same time. I have to sequence them for myself, or I would need to hire help. And currently, I think I've just crossed the threshold where it's on the table to hire help. So I'll probably be looking for somebody Portland-based to like come in and be I don't know exactly what the rules. It's going to be kind of a hybrid, like producer, social media, and ops. I don't know if you're an organized person and you live in Portland and you want a job, reach out to me. Because that's sort of where I'm at right now, and I got to figure out how that is all going to work. And it definitely needs to be in Portland, because so much of the stuff happens in the studio. So a lot of it's going to be like, we need somebody to get the snacks for the show. We need somebody to go pick up this thing from the store because we didn't have a hammer, or like our drill broke or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that's just logistical. And then also, if we need to get a location, we need to go pick up rented lenses, whatever those things are. That's all part of that's going to be part of it. So, anyways, yeah. But as far as not killing myself with anxiety, the night before we filmed Elite Heat, I think I slept 2 hours because I was real stressed out about it, because there were so many things that could go wrong. I was joking that when we ran the episode, it was the most expensive live demo I've ever done, because that app, like, if it didn't work, that was it. Like, I didn't have a backup plan. Like, we would have just been toast. And fortunately, it worked mostly. Oh God, yeah. Anyways, we laugh so we don't have to cry. The app worked, and so now that it's done, we're into the editing phase, and that episode comes out tomorrow. So I've got to work with once I get done here, got to go to my editor, and then later today I'll get the video. So I've got to get that uploaded, create the closed captions, do all the other things that need to be done so that it can go up. But that's like, it's stressful, but it's mine. If that makes it, like, I don't mind doing it because I'm like, it's fun. Like, this is a very complicated puzzle where I have to find, I have to have a good idea that I think people want to watch. I have to figure out how to shape that idea so that a company finds enough value in it that they want to sponsor it. I have to figure out how to make it and get all the different people, the camera, the hair and makeup, the sound, the lighting, like all that has to happen. The logistics of getting different people here, because like we flew Shang in from Milwaukee and had to get Shruti in from Vancouver, and all these different people have to get in from different places, and there's hotels and there's food and there's lunch and there's all this stuff that has to happen. But it's a puzzle. Like, it's a fun puzzle to try to figure out how can we get all these independent things lined up in such a way that it makes something that's so much bigger than I could ever make by myself. And that to me is really that's the reward. It's like, I got to make this super fun thing, and I'm so proud of the artifact, but the process of it is like, there's so much to it that I love. But yeah, that's pixel positions for smash burgers. What's going on, ear holes? I love the name. Do a thing like Bob Ross, and just double down on that one thing. I think I'm not good at that. I've found that my personality type is very generalist. I like doing a little bit of a lot of things, and if I have to do the same thing over and over and over again, it chafes a little bit. So I think that's one of the reasons I gravitate toward video production, is that like every series sort of has a natural lifespan. Like every once in a while you get lucky, you create a great British Bake Off or something like that. But generally speaking, shows live for, 3 to 5 years, and then they sort of, like the showrunners run out of ideas, and it kind of moves on and it becomes something else. And I like that you get to just take the format through to its natural conclusion, and then you go build another thing, right? Because that's the point, that's the fun. But that's sort of where we're at. Do I ever put on get-togethers in the Portland area? I do occasionally put together get-togethers in the Portland area, and you can find those here, I think. Yes. So it's been a minute because I've been like busy, and I do apologize to anybody who's on this list. But I run a little thing. It's a super casual thing called Food with Friends, where we will pick a spot and we will go get everybody just shows up, and there's usually food carts. That's typically how we do it. So that way everybody can order the food that they want. That will make sure that it's got, vegan and dairy-free and gluten-free and all the different options that you need, in addition to like, whatever. Like all food restrictions or lack of restrictions are accommodated. And then we'll make sure that it's got some kind of like beverage setup where you can get a beer if you want, or there's lots of non-alcoholic options. We try to choose places that have interesting non-alcoholic options. So like there's a really good mocktail culture in Portland. But the general idea is that it is a no agenda hangout. So we pick a spot, we pick a time, send out an email and say, we're going to be at this place at this time. Come hang out if you want. And people will just come, they'll come through, stay for a minute, stay for the whole time. It's a good way to meet people in the Portland area. If you are in a city that can sustain more than like 5 people at a meetup, I strongly recommend this as a great way to get people to just to meet people, right? It's it's very grassroots. Kyle Shevlin and I started this. It's Kyle over there. We started this years ago. He and I were just going to meet somewhere. Like we'd been hanging out every couple of months. We'd like go get a drink or something. And we were like planning one, and one of us was like, what if we just like tweeted that we were going to be there? And so we put it out on Twitter that we were going to be at this spot, and a group of people showed up. And then we were like, what if we just did this every time? And so it turned into this thing where we were like sending out we were tagging people and letting everybody know that we were coming. And then it got too big. We kept forgetting people. So we made it into a formalized newsletter list, but it's still not like a thing. There's no talks. There's no entry fee. There's nothing formal about it. It's just like, hey, do you live in Portland and you want to see a person in real life? Come here. Yeah, there's some fantastic mocktails out there. Like huge improvement over the last few years in the general quality of a mocktail. What age did I start web dev? I probably started when I was in my teens, so I don't know. I probably like 15-ish. I don't have a CS degree. I'm a college dropout, in fact. And how does a beginner become self-taught? Just build stuff, man. That's unfortunately the only answer I have. Is there are so many good resources in terms of blogs, videos, etc. that will walk you through. Like if you need absolute zero, Free Code Camp has some really good zero to functional stuff on like how to learn different languages. Front End Masters, if you've got some money, is really good for this. They've got onboarding paths. The MDN docs are good for reference. Like if you're trying to figure out how something works, you can always just type mdn.io/thing thing. This is actually one of my favorite things I've learned recently. If you haven't seen this before, I'm so happy to be able to share it with you. But if you find a thing and you're like, okay, I want to learn about, I don't know, set.add, right? It just goes right to it. You don't have to know the exact link. You can just like do a thing, and then you can say, let's learn about maps. And it just pulls up the right page for you. This is dope. It's very, very, very helpful. Yeah. Kyle's been doing like a every Thursday he's going to this place called Beer, which is the original spot that we would meet at. And I think he's just working out of there. And if people drop in and drop out, which is pretty great. Yeah, in my case, I had an opportunity to like make zero money and live in a band and try to be a rock star that I couldn't turn down. But yeah, once I got out of the band, I just couldn't see a benefit in going back to college. I also, however, to be clear, I am not good in structured learning environments. Like, I'm a very difficult student. I was not popular with my teachers because I want to learn in the way that I learn, right? And the way that I learn is very chaotic. I want to watch part of a video until somebody says a thing that I understand, and then I will very quickly want to like use that thing, and then I will work until I hit the edge of my understanding, and then I want to like watch more video or read more docs, because I'm trying to like do all of it at once. I want information to come in, and then I want to put it into practice, and I tend to learn pretty quick. I've got good recall, so like when people say something, I tend to hear it, and I can recall it. I can recall really well for short periods of time. Like my English teacher once thought they'd gotten me. They were like, okay, today we're gonna memorize 25 lines of like Julius Caesar, the play. And I memorized like 25 lines of a Marcus Aurelius speech, delivered it, and got it exactly right. Sat down, and like within 10 seconds of sitting down, the whole thing had like exited my brain. Because I can hold on to information long enough to like do a thing. And if I put it into practice, then it'll stick. And I have good recall for that. And it is definitely aligned with my interests too. Like if I'm into something, like Marissa will joke that I have like perfect recall for what we ate at what restaurant. So we'll be talking about a spot, and like yesterday we drove by this restaurant, and they had done a special dinner years ago where they got a bunch of different chefs from around the city to each do one course in this tasting menu. It was like 12 courses. And we were saying like, oh, we should go to this restaurant. And I was like, that chef was actually like the one bite in that tasting course that we didn't like. And she was like, how do you remember this? Not surprised to hear that I'm difficult. Vinny, I bet you were difficult too. And I bet it never stopped. Dude, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That is great. Yeah, I mean, so the thing about being self-employed is that you are your own boss, and that means that deadlines all have to be self-imposed and all that kind of stuff, and that is really tricky. For me, there are certain things that I can make myself do. And for those of you who have been paying attention, you may have noticed that there are things I can't make myself do. Like I still haven't released an Astro course despite promising one. It is, I swear to God, I am working on it. The problem that I've had is that I tend to work on the most urgent thing, and it's not urgent, right? So kind of demonstrating the point that I'm making, where like deadlines have to be, for me at least, something has to be on fire for me to be focused on it. And so I should probably just like announce a launch date so that I'm on the hook. I'll look like a fool if I don't publish. Oh, cool. Yeah, Andre Landgraf sets up San Francisco stuff. I think there's a lot of value in that. And when you talk about when you start to talk about what the networking value of things is. Like you don't want it to feel too transactional, but at the same time, I have never regretted meeting somebody, because meeting somebody gives you one of two like long-term outcomes, or you'll like shake somebody's hand and you don't really meet them at all. It's just kind of like a quick intro and then you move on with your lives. But if you meet them for real, you get to hang out with them, you get one of two outcomes. One is you get a vibe check and you realize that something's not quite right, like that it doesn't feel right, and that's so useful. I've had that happen a few times where I'll go to a party, I get introduced to somebody that I've seen online, and something doesn't feel right. Like you get the intro, you talk to them for a minute, and you're just kind of like, the alarm's going off. I don't have anything specific to put my finger on, but like something back here is going like something's up, something's wrong. And then later they'll come to me with a project, or they'll want to get involved in something that I'm working on, and I remember that thing happened, and so I'll ask around to my network, and I'll start hearing stories, right? And so getting that in-person vibe check is so critical when things are going to get sideways. And I think I've saved myself a lot of heartache by doing that, by meeting some people in person and realizing what they're like when they're not heavily curated on social media. And then the other thing that you get is, and this is far more common, because the list of people that I've done a bad vibe check on, I think fits on two hands. This is not a common occurrence, but when it happens, you want to have done that check. But on the other hand, like in most cases, you meet somebody, you get to spend some time with them, and they become somebody that you would consider like a casual friend. If you saw them again somewhere, you'd be stoked to see them. You'd want to hang out with them, get dinner or lunch. And if you see them again, then they start to become more of a friend. So Mark Texan, for example, just hosted the Elite Heat show. And so I met Mark 4-ish years ago, I think. And we'd talked a little bit online, he'd been doing some stuff, I'd been doing some stuff. We'd crossed paths because we were kind of on similar paths, and it was like, hey, yeah, you seem cool, right? But we never really talked, we never really interacted. And so then I think the first time that we really met, I was at Angie Jones and Johnny Jones' 20-year anniversary. They threw a cool party out in New Orleans. I was there, Marissa was there, and Mark came with his wife. And so at this, it was like a picnic thing, we ended up sitting at a table with Mark, and I actually talked to him for the first time, really felt like I had a good conversation with him. And I was like, man, I like that guy. I want to spend more time with Mark. And so since then, if there was an opportunity, I was at Google I/O and I knew that Mark was going to be there, so I I sought him out. I wanted to find him and say hi, and we ended up talking for a while there. We ended up, sharing a little bit of what are your long-term goals? What are you trying to do? And he mentioned casually that he'd always wanted to host a game show, and so then we were somewhere else, and we crossed paths again, and I was like, hey man, I'm thinking about doing this game show, and I think you should host it. And he was like, you tell me when, right? He was just in, right? But what ended up happening is we, through the course of a few meetings, ended up becoming friends. And so when he came out to host Elite Heat, he also ended up, he stayed in our guest bedroom, and we were hanging out like friends. And now I think if I ever go through Chicago, I'm hitting up Mark ahead of time so I can plan around hanging out with him while I'm there, right? And I think that that's the interesting thing about this industry is that you start out by seeing somebody as an avatar on a screen, and then you casually get introduced with them. Because I think before Angie's party, I had maybe shaken Mark's hand somewhere, been like, hey man, it's nice to meet you, right? And so that it's like the intro becomes oh, I've seen you before, maybe we talked this time, becomes, hey, we should actually hang out, we're both going to be in this event, becomes, hey, let's work on something together. And now it's a whole thing. Mark and I we're cooking up all sorts of fun plans that I am reasonably confident are actually going to happen, because we're both pretty ambitious people who tend to follow through when we say we're going to do something. And that's one story of so many. Me getting recruited at Netlify was one of those. Sarah Drasner and I had known each other very casually online, exchanged a couple posts back and forth, saying hello, admiring each other's work. Met for the briefest of moments at JS Heroes, which is a really cool conference in Romania, which if you submit to conferences, you should submit to their CFP. It's open until the end of December. I need to do that as well. But, and then, you know, we sort of like existed as very casual acquaintances, Sarah and I. And then she was at Netlify and she needed somebody to come in, and she'd seen the work that I'd done at Gatsby. We'd done the vibe check in person by, you know, casually meeting a couple times. And so she started recruiting me, right? Huge turning point in my life, because I spent a little bit of time in public and got a chance to meet somebody who I had like interacted with online. And that's like Robin, who hired me at IBM. Same thing, met at a conference, and we were friends for 5-6 years before there was ever even a question. Like, I'd been running an agency forever, and there was no question that I didn't want a job. Like, Robin and I were just friends. So then when things changed and I started looking for a job, I remember asking Robin, I was like, where would you apply if you were looking for like what I do? And he just happened to have a role open. So he like threw me a job description and was like, you should just come here, right? So network is so critical, and these little moments of like, meet somebody, go somewhere, make a friend, make a casual acquaintance, so that when you see them somewhere else, you're not introducing yourself, you're saying, what's up, it's good to see you again. Those little moments make such a big difference when you take them in aggregate and see how much of your career is actually built on somebody that you met once or twice and had a good interaction with, putting in a kind word for you. Yeah, lots and lots of very cool stuff that way. Oh man, there's some good stuff in Chicago, because like Natalie Davis is in Chicago, Mark is in Chicago, Cassidy Williams is in Chicago. Man, there's so many people out in that area. I'm probably forgetting a million names right now, but like it could be one of those things that if you can't find it, create it. You know what I mean? Like put the invite out, find where you can drop a notice to like Chicago area people, and just put out the invite. Maybe only a few people show up the first time, but just be consistent, and they'll start to show, and you can get more and more people. I also am pretty shameless about just extending an invite in public. Don't be weird and DM people, but like, you know, when we were doing we used to call it Beers at Beer, Kyle and I, we would just like tag, you know, Scott Hanselman and Joel Hooks and Jamin Holmgren and like all these people who were in the area that we didn't know super well. We just tag them and be like, hey, we're throwing a thing, like no pressure, but if you want to come, there's going to be a group. And so we'd actively recruit by like tagging people. And if they showed no interest, we wouldn't tag them again. But if they were like, I can't make it this time, but let me know next time, we'd just keep tagging them. And eventually some of them showed up, and it ended up being a whole network, right? So like, if you're going to put something together, tag Mark, see what he's got going on. He's got kids, so he might not be able to make it. Same with Cassidy. But like, who knows? Maybe they can drop by, and maybe you'll make some new friends, new connections. Freshers, like freshmen? I don't know. If you're saying any tips for freshmen, I'll just I repeat this a lot, so I'm going to say it fast. Build a lot of things, put them in public, and try to meet as many people as you can. It'll change your life. Like it's simple advice, but I've never seen it not work. Like it you know, do it with an earnest interest in getting better and an earnest interest in making friends with people, and you kind of can't fail. Is this a Field of Dreams joke, Robertables? Cleveland Tech breakfast. Oh dang, I like that. Yeah, see, I like this. I think this is really a fun time. Like doing any way to just create an excuse for people to hang out. Like when I was in Austin, we used to do this thing that we lovingly called Fuck It Brunch, and the whole idea was we would turn on a griddle, and everybody was expected to show up in their pajamas because we didn't want people to feel like they had to like get dressed and go to a party. It was like, just roll in whatever you got. We'll have some pancake batter, we'll have a waffle iron going, we'll get some, you know, you can throw some bacon on if you want. Just make yourself a breakfast at our house and we'll just hang out, right? And it was a really, really casual way to have people just come through and hang out. We throw dinners at our house a lot. We try to get people to meet up in different places. I don't know if I might try to pick this up next year, do like meetups in the studio. I've done it once. It was really fun. We threw a party in the studio. That was really fun. Just kind of a whole thing, you know. I got a bachelor's degree, trying it front end, failed 10 to 15 interviews. Unfortunate fact of the matter right now is that interviewing is a numbers game, and if you're failing in the interviews, try to figure out what you're failing on if you can. Like if you're failing in tech, that's an easy thing to solve. If you're failing on like the one-to-one interviews, maybe you can do some mock interviews and get some feedback. There are a lot of people who will happily do mock interviews just to help you get a feel for like how do you get a little more comfortable? How do you tell a story? A lot of times what they're looking for in these interviews is your ability to relate a story and to kind of talk about a problem that you faced and how you overcame it, and you know, or a lesson that you've learned the hard way and what you've changed to move on and do it better next time. Those sorts of challenges I think are very you learn it by doing, unfortunately, and so you just kind of have to keep interviewing, keep pushing, keep trying, and it's gonna work. Yeah, these big old griddles, man. I got a big one in my backyard. I think it's 36 incher. Just a real game changer in terms of being able to casually hang out with people. What's up, Linda? How you doing? It's good to see you. We have had no agenda all day. We are literally just sitting here chatting, and I'm loving it. Might wrap it up somewhat soon here, just because I have a lot of stuff I got to do today. Rewarding to support local breakfast kitchens post-pandemic. Hell yeah. I mean, that's the other thing too, is like, if you start thinking about all the different ways that this stuff connects, you've got like, we in general have a lot of people who are feeling very like lonely and disconnected, especially post-pandemic. There's just sort of a dearth of options to go places, especially places that aren't like super expensive where you have to like buy tickets and stuff. But if I can go, you know, I can eat breakfast at home, or I can eat lunch or dinner at home and then go out and get just a water and not spend any money, or like spend $3 on a beer, I can then hang out with some real people and have a good time, and I don't necessarily need to spend money. But for the people who do come and spend money, I'm bringing people to some food trucks that need the business late in the year. Like, it's a weird time in Portland, and food trucks always struggle. So going out and supporting these local businesses during the rainy season, making sure that they've still got some business, that helps them stay open so that they'll still be there next summer when we all want to go out when it's nice. And, you know, if I introduce somebody to a new place that becomes their new favorite place, or introduce two people who end up being like business partners, or one of them gets a job, like all this stuff, there's all these little knock-on effects that you don't really think about. And it shouldn't be the reason that you do it, but dang, does it feel nice, right? And it's nice when you start thinking about all the little good things that stack up when you just start creating spaces and creating opportunities for people. I think that's a really, really nice thing to do. You came from Andrew Huang's for producer show to my stuff. That's super cool, because usually it's the other. Well, actually, that's not fair. Andrew's stuff is obviously way bigger than mine, and has been around a lot longer. But it's interesting that you would end up on mine. I feel like people who find mine end up going like back down the path to go find the source material. But that's super cool. That is super cool. Butterfly effect is huge. I do think that makes a giant. It's just you just can't quantify it, right? Because it's you can only see it in retrospect, and when it's happening, you don't really think much of it. Like introducing somebody, or taking a call, or trying a new thing, whatever it is, you can never predict that your you can never predict that like one action is going to lead to an outcome. So the strategy has to be do stuff because it feels nice to have done it, and not because of the outcome that it gets. And eventually they will add up to, or you'll have a breakout hit or whatever that turns into an opportunity or that creates an outcome that you're really happy with, but the outcome becomes a bonus because what was actually rewarding was doing the thing. And I think that's, I don't know, that's another part of that like process of like, do I get to answer yes to the important questions today? Is that outcomes then become like a bonus. They're not really it's not really the point. The point is that I lived a life that I was happy with, and the bonus is that the act of doing that led to good things for people, you know, me and others. And I really do, I find that to be very, it's very rewarding when you think about it that way. Roadmap to become a full stack dev in 2025. I don't have one of these, but Front End Masters has a pretty good one. Free Code Camp has a pretty good one, and there are probably a lot of YouTubers who have actively published those. I don't know if they're any good because I haven't watched them, but yeah, my advice is always just build what you know and try to add 10% to it and just keep expanding. When your friends make progress and you're staying behind, try not to make it too competitive like that, because you don't know what your friends' networks look like. You don't know, you know, what they're doing behind the scenes. And so if what is useful is, are they doing things that you're not? Like, for example, I know that for a long time I had a really good friend. I have a really good friend, but at the time he was doing a lot of work that he was just getting all this recognition, all these opportunities, all this cool stuff was happening for him. And I would get really jealous because I wasn't getting those opportunities. And for a long time, I wasn't like bitter, but I was very envious. Like things would happen for him and I would be like, man, how come none of that ever happens for me, right? But then at some point, I don't know if somebody told me to do it or if I just had a revelation, but I started thinking like, what's different? What does he do that I don't? And I realized there was all this stuff he was doing with his networking, with his like in-person stuff, the way he was publishing online, the way he was participating in different communities. And I was like, oh wait, he's doing way more than I am. And that's why he's getting these opportunities. And so I shifted and I started doing not exactly what he was doing, but I started doing similar things. I took inspiration from what was working for him, and I found a way to make it work for me. And all of a sudden I started getting the same opportunities. So I do think that there's maybe a like run a retrospective, like I did XYZ. My friend did, you know, ABC and XYZ. What did ABC get them that it didn't get me? Like, how could I incorporate some of that or whatever it is? And, you know, if you feel comfortable, talk to your friends, ask them what were they doing? How did they get the interviews? What kind of answers were they giving in these interviews that got them through to the next round? Information can't hurt you, right? Like the only, in my experience, like we all fear failure, but I really strongly believe that the only true way to fail is to not try, because any action gives you information, which allows you to adjust and try again. And if you continually get information, you kind of can't fail because you're always adjusting you might do it in the least efficient way possible. It might be an absolute slog. You might hate every step of it. But if you keep getting information and adjusting your approach, eventually you'll find a way through, right? And I think that's sort of what I try to keep in mind and try to remember is that like if you're learning, you can't fail. You're just learning more ways not to do the things that don't work, so that you're kind of honing away this is the sculpture process, right? You're getting rid of all the parts that aren't the statue. Eventually, you'll get to the thing that works, and that will be a form of success, right? So I don't know. So much of this is just the hard work of not giving up when it's hard, because anything worth doing is going to have a lot of moments where it feels like a bad idea. People are telling you it's not going to work. You're starting to think maybe you should change directions. And you know, there's value in changing directions when something's not working, but there's a difference between not sticking it through because it sucks and not sticking it through because it's actually not working. And I think a lot of times we don't exhaust our options before we give up, and then we end up in kind of a similar situation where we're in a new area that we're also not quite getting the success, and we'd have to stick that through too. And if we then give up there, I know a lot of folks throughout my life who have sort of perpetually been about to break through in something, and they're on their 20th something, because every time it gets hard, they talk themselves into, well, this isn't the right thing, I'm going to do a new thing, and then they move to something that feels easier to start, but they inevitably hit that same wall of like, you just got to do the hard, boring, repetitive, challenging shit to get through to that breakthrough. Yeah, I mean, Jacob's repeating a lot of that, and I think that is the correct way to do it. What kind of front end projects? Anything. Like, just keep building, because every time you build, just like add a new thing, and that gives you the ability to, now you can do it. You can point to it and say, look, I built that. And so do varied and what you know plus 10% projects, because if you're always pushing yourself about 10%, you can still finish. But that way you're always still growing and not just building the same project over and over again. How do I estimate? By getting it really, really wrong for 20 years so that I can kind of get it right now, but I'm still usually wrong. I more realistically, I would say I take projects and I break them down into steps. So like, I actually now, if it's something I've never done before, I will build in discovery as part of the estimate. And I will say, I'm going to take, depending on the scope of the project, 1 to 5 days and actually plan this. And what I mean by that is I will do some research on what are the different approaches to how we could solve this problem, how are other people doing it, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm trying to break down what we've been tasked with. Like, you build X. Okay, what is X actually? And it's going to be a newsletter system. We need all these different UX patterns. We need this database. We need this content management flow. We need admin UI. We need whatever it is, right? All these certain things. We start breaking those down and understanding what they are. Look at what we need versus what we have in other parts of the system, and start to understand what are we building versus what are we integrating versus what are we buying. And if I can put all of that list together and I start to understand, like, okay, so what you asked for was X, and the component parts of X are A through K. We have A, B, and C, but the rest of these are going to be net new builds. So we need to treat each of these as a separate thing. I've ordered these in such a way that if we ship like D, E, and F, we've got an MVP. And then each successive thing can be an independent ship. But there are question marks between F and G that until we've answered those, we can't accurately estimate G. So what I try to do is understand how much of the project do we really know, and scope and scope and scope and scope until we get to the point where what I'm estimating doesn't have any, we'll figure that out when we get to it steps. It's all like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to use this tool, we're going to make this thing, we're going to get here, and then we're going to ship it and measure. And then once we've proven, and this is the question mark, once we've proven that this is what the customer wants and that they're willing to use it, then we will add feature, right? And by doing that discovery work of really thinking through what the component parts are, where we get killed in estimation is that oftentimes we will think about like, oh, we're going to make a login flow. And so as engineers, we go, okay, I've implemented OAuth 2 before. That'll take me 2 days. And then we start building it and we realize, wait, I have to do a password reset flow. Wait, I have to do a profile update page. Wait, I have to do integration with our session management system that is going to need to, it requires some kind of crypto thing, like cryptography, not cryptocurrency, that like re-encodes the whatever. Like you find yourself suddenly down these rabbit holes because we didn't actually game it out. We didn't start thinking about what we were going to build and what UIs would be needed, what flows would be needed. The fact that we don't have a password reset component workflow, like our design system doesn't even include that. So now we got to go to the design team and we got to talk to them about getting new components designed, right? Suddenly when you start actually gaming through what each of the screens will be, what the functionality is, where they connect to, the estimates get much better because we don't have any parts where we're going like, and then we'll figure that out, right? The hand wave is where things really, really get out of control in an estimate. It also makes like, it's frustrating, right? And it can frustrate teammates too, because they just want to get in and build. And sometimes that's okay. Like if the estimate is not like, we're committing to show this on stage in 2.5 weeks, then whatever, estimate it, and the deadline will move when it needs to move. But if you're committing to like a hard deadline for a presentation or whatever, do this annoying work, and you can usually identify where the big risks are. And often, if you can see the big risks, then you can mitigate for them in the way that you plan the project. Yeah, I don't know if that helps. I hope that helps. Let's see, we're basically at the end of the day here. I'm gonna never give up. Yeah, never give up, but potentially change directions. That's the way I like to think about it. Like, if you really have tried everything and it's not making through, then it is time to reassess the strategy. Might be that you're doing the right things and it just takes longer for someone else to see it. That is 1000%. That is a great observation, Linda. And it depends on what the job is, right? Like if you're a generalist and you're trying to get a generalist job and you apply for specialist roles, it is very difficult to do that unless you niche down your skill set and talk about what they want to hear and not what you could possibly do, right? Like, that's a whole other thing. We could talk about that for days. But yeah, it's just a lot of going on. Yeah, Aaron Francis has some good stuff on publishing your work. I think Aaron's a great example of doing this in a very impressive way that he was able to leverage into a very interesting, like, he's doing what I'm doing, but he has a team. He's working with Steve Tenuto, which is, I'm very jealous. But yeah, let's see. Fixed bid is problematic if you don't write airtight scopes. I love a fixed bid, and the reason I love a fixed bid is because I am very, very good at scoping. And so when scope changes, I just hold it up and I say, this just changed, and it's going to cost you this much to make that change. Do you actually want to do that? And usually what happens is they go, you know what, let's hold off and we'll do it later. And then we do the plan that we had, because what happens is everybody gets excited and they start changing ideas and throwing new stuff in. I love a fixed bid because a fixed bid becomes a very good decision-making document. You've already got this budget approved. If you make the decision that you're about to make, it's going to blow up this scope, it's going to change these things, and it's going to change the price. Do you actually want to do that? And sometimes they'll say, yes, what we're saying is better, we're okay, we approve the changes, let's go. And it's good because then you're getting the approval up front for the fact that you've changed the plan. Usually, when somebody looks at it, they'll say, you're right, I like this idea, but not enough to like blow up the process. Let's get this done. So fixed bid without proper scoping, bad idea. Fixed bid with airtight scoping, ooh, good, real good. Let's see. Yes, exactly. Do you ever feel abandoned? Man, that's a big question with 2 minutes left. Abandoned is an interesting way to... I don't feel abandoned, but I do feel alone, if that makes sense. Like, abandonment implies that there was somebody taking care of me who has chosen to no longer do so. And I don't view my relationships in that way. So I view every relationship I have as mutual care. And it's why, like, sometimes people ask me if I want to mentor them, and I say no, because I don't like the idea of the power dynamic of mentor-mentee. I like instead the like fellow traveler setup. And I feel this way about my family. Like, in my family, there's a mutual care. There's mutual exchange. Like, my parents like they support us, they take care of us, but at the same time, like we take care of and support them. We have to put work into that relationship. We don't just get things out of it. And if I'm in a situation where I feel like somebody is caring for me and I'm not returning anything in that relationship, I start to get uncomfortable. And the only way that I could feel abandoned is if somebody was my caretaker who then chose to no longer care for me, right? And I do have plenty of situations in my past where there were people that I was really close to, and our paths were aligned, and then at some point they diverged, or you know, our velocity changed, and that changed the dynamic or something, and we didn't even have a falling out so much as we just sort of stopped. We just kind of hit a point where I was like, well, I don't think we go anywhere from here. And that feels really bad, and I feel really lonely, but I don't feel abandoned. Like I am the one who takes care of me. So I can't abandon, well, I could abandon myself, but that's a pretty catastrophic way of looking at things, right? But like I'm going to continue living my life, and I am the caretaker of my own health and happiness and well-being. And other people can influence that, but they don't control it. And so nobody is my keeper, nobody is my caretaker. So instead, I think of it as loneliness. Like if I feel like nobody's on my side, if I feel like I'm trying to do something and nobody gets it or nobody sees what I see, that's very lonely, and it's very tough to be in a situation where you feel like you're just kind of on your own. That's truly one of the reasons why I care so much about community and why that's a key focus. Like when I get to the end of the day, did I spend time with some people? Did I do something that helped the community? Those are the types of questions that fit into my like most important things, because it truly is like that's the cure for loneliness. The cure for loneliness is having people around you that care. And the only way that you get those people around you is with that effort, that mutual exchange. And so I think about the mutual care as being sort of I think of, so the way I learned about this concept was actually in the context of romantic relationships. So somebody was talking about what makes a good relationship, and I remember what they said was that the reason a lot of relationships fail long term is that couples will set into a routine. And in that routine, one of the people becomes the caretaker and one of the people becomes the cared for. And you can't love somebody from that dynamic, at least not romantically, right? Because it changes, like you're into, if you're not both mutually putting into each other, like you should be caring for each other, not one person is caretaken and one person is caretaker. Because it changes the dynamic. Like you're no longer somebody's partner, you're somebody's nanny or somebody's groundskeeper or whatever it is. And that feeling becomes a direct conflict for like respect, if that makes sense. Like I think about it in a way of if I'm in a relationship, romantic or business or casual or whatever, I'm looking at relative levels of effort. Like I think about this a lot because like I want to make sure that I'm an active participant in a relationship, and you know, and I think this is why people have different speeds. Like some people just like they pour into other people, and I don't have that in me, and so I'll kind of pull back from a relationship if I feel like I'm taking too much because I don't have it to give back, right? And that's just my, you know, that's my comfort level. Everybody's got their love languages and all that kind of stuff, and let's not talk about the issues with love languages. It's not really the point. What I'm trying to say is I think that when I started realizing that I would be cared for in proportion to how hard I cared for everybody else and around me, it helped me feel more like I had agency over how lonely I felt. And it gave me an opportunity to then, if I'm feeling lonely, I have an opportunity to fix that. I can set up a local meetup. I can attend a conference. I can attend a meetup. I can go online and find some folks who talk about stuff I like. There's a way for me to go find something that I can do, and just recognizing that, you know, there's work to start any of these things, and they're all built on momentum. Relationships are flywheels, and they will run for a long time once you get them moving, but they still require care and attention, or they will kind of fade to nothing. And that's us going way over time. So I'm gonna end it here, but I hope that is helpful. I know that wasn't a direct answer to your question, but I think about that stuff a lot. Let's see. And there are great questions in here, and I'm sorry that I don't have a chance to talk to them all or to answer them all. I'll be back. Let's see. Next Tuesday is Christmas Eve, so we're not going to be streaming then. The next Tuesday after that is New Year's Eve. I might stream. We'll see. I'll make that decision a little bit later. I might take the time off just because December's been a little rough. It's been a long one, but we'll figure something out. Anyways, thank you all for hanging out. Come back on Thursday. Well, come back tomorrow because I'm taking over the VS Code stream. That's going to be super fun. Like, just come over there. It's going to be fun. It's going to be chaos. It's Cassidy Williams. It's Sean Day Person. It's Jack Harrington. We're gonna build something fun together. And it's, you know, we're on the VS Code channel, so you can probably guess what we're going to be using to do it. And they're going to announce something cool. So you get a product announcement, you get to hang out with cool people, and also I'll be there. And then on Thursday, we are going to be learning how to use TDD as a thinking tool on Learn with Jason. That is going to be really fun. I love that sort of like architectural thinking. That's kind of what I mean when I was talking about how to estimate properly. And yeah, go watch the Web Dev Challenge today. It's out right now. You can watch it on YouTube. Tomorrow, Lead Heat comes out. This is what I'm saying. December's been a big month, y'all. Like, it's been busy. So this is a big week. And please do like the channel, subscribe to things, leave comments. I know it sucks, but please leave comments because it makes such a big difference in the way that the algorithm perceives the quality of content. I know. I'm sorry. But we must please the algorithm, or the algorithm shall forsake us. I love you all. We'll see you next time.